Just 5 minutes ago, the halls of national power erupted with a sudden political upheaval. A deal was secretly reinstated on November 19, restoring the privileges of Vasily Ulyi and Vinovnik Hausa. Names like Andrei, Rimovich, and Belousov flickered through the corridors of influence. Meanwhile, Tichy and Sarai, once called the Cardinal of Russia almost a year after their fall from grace, made a dramatic reappearance. And as chaos unfolded, the conflict in Cluj quietly drew to a close. Belousov's words hit like a thunderclap, raw, uncompromising, igniting fury among the lawmakers. Amid the swirling tensions of Central Asia, a story began to take shape. Stay with us to the very end, because what you're about to hear will shake your beliefs. Support this narrative, like if it moves you, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts below. Do you stand with Belousov's stance or root for the others? Now, let's dive in. He entered the chamber with the calm precision of someone on a mission, no fuss, no fanfare, just a quiet resolve. It was reminiscent of a battle returning to its roots, like a relic of modern art coming alive. An acquaintance, clad in a rumpled jacket, approached not to serve work but to confront it head-on. Andrei, Rimovich, and Belousov, the ministers of the Russian Federation, moved through the room. Once, the economy's shadowy architect, now a figure clad in steel resolve, standing under the shadow of Kashmir scarf, an emblem too simple to fit this grand setting. His face was dry, his expression distant, revealing none of the tension he must have felt. Those around him wore masks of strained patience, their faces drained, eyes darker, clothes blackened like archives from Minfin during years of crisis. Clutching a slender folder, more of a thin sheet of paper than a document, he casually approached. The air around him thickened, a sense of impending change. He moved toward the cooler, where a group of young deputies whispered, voices low but tense. He spoke, voice clear yet coated with calm defiance, "If you reject a digital pension system, then live your life as you see fit." The words hung heavy, as if an invisible wire had latched onto everyone's nerves. Inside, something shifted. Though unseen, tension crackled like rusted metal under strain. Every step felt deliberate, slow, heavy, as if each move was a calculated strike in a silent war. Then, as if materializing from the shadows, a figure appeared in the corridor. No fanfare, just a silent presence and ominous, unmovable force. Without raising a hand, without a single word, the observer simply stared. Moments stretched into eternity. Vyacheslav Volodin faced the assembly, voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. "You've long forgotten the construction days of 1987 when Kyrgyz, Russians, Ukrainians, Uzbeks built this land together." His gaze was piercing, each word weighted with history. "You think migrants were different then?" "No. Back then, we called ourselves Soviet citizens." He edged closer, his expression unreadable but his fingers trembling with restrained anger. "Since that year, nothing has changed. Only the memory, forgotten, dismissed, dusted off and shelved. And now, you're ready to replace them like widgets." The cameras flashed red witnesses to a storm brewing. Hundreds of voices, countless eyes each tuned into the unfolding drama, felt the electric tension snap. One voice rose above the rest, louder and sharper, cutting through the silence. "You want to deport everyone. All migrants grouped into one. But do you see what awaits? Who will build your roads? Who will drain the snow every winter? Who will keep this country afloat when you tear apart communities?" He paused, glancing back at the room, voice dropping to a whisper. "When I left home that morning, I believed in a better future. But now, I see only chaos, because you believe in division." He cast a glance at the list before him, numbers, statistics, the future written in cold figures. Over 10% of construction workers are migrants. Up to 40% in regions like Tassos, with even more in Siberia. In logistics, nearly 1/3 of the workforce. "Who will lead your regions?" he demanded. "Who will remove the snow in your freezing winters? Will your own children inherit this mess?" The room grew tense, the silence heavy with unspoken truths. Some deputies shifted uncomfortably, others nodded in silent agreement. One in the back silently recorded everything, eyes fixed and unblinking. The atmosphere thickened, thunderous even. Yet, amid this chaos, one figure lingered silently, an observer who seemed to emerge from the shadows, like a figure from another realm. No gesture, no demand, just piercing, unwavering gaze. "Vyacheslav Viktorovich," he started softly, voice edged with resolve. You've forgotten the days of building metallurgical magnets in 1987 when Kyrgyz, Uzbeks, Ukrainians, and Russians worked shoulder to shoulder. His voice grew firmer, memories echoing. My father returned from those years with a Tajik face, an immigrant who built this country from the ground up. The room was silent, every eye on him. You think migrants are just faceless labor? No. They are us. The backbone of this nation. His words cut through the tense atmosphere. Deporting millions, what will that leave us? An empty shell, a ghost town. You're planning to replace real people with machines, robots, smart tractors, AI, anything to avoid truth. From the corner, a deputy pulled out a phone, perhaps recording this moment. The tension was palpable, the future uncertain. This wasn't just rhetoric, it was a challenge, a reckoning. Think about it, he concluded softly. When you discard these people, do you truly believe they'll thank you? Or will they become subhumans, cast aside, forgotten? When your own children inherit this chaos, who will hold the country together? A terrible silence settled. The members of the assembly seemed frozen, reacting only in whispers or shifts of their seats. Some understood, deep down. In this moment, the silence was deafening. One question, one truth: power lies in how we choose to treat our people, the ones who built, sustain, and preserve this land. Will we see them as partners or as obstacles? The answer will decide everything. What if one man's quiet return to the chamber could shatter a nation's deportation dreams and expose the hidden hands building its future? Just moments ago, Andrei Rimovich Belousov stepped into the Duma hall, his presence like an uninvited storm, stirred by overheard whispers of digital pensions and personal freedoms that ignored the real struggles outside. Each step echoed like thunder in a silent forge, heavy, deliberate. Everyone watching his retreating back sensed it deep in their bones. Today, no agenda would escape unscathed. The plenary session droned on in its familiar haze. Papers rustled softly, like dry leaves underfoot. Fingers toyed with pens, twisting them absently, the faint click-clack piercing the air. Then, from the podium, Vyacheslav Volodin rose, his face carved from unyielding granite, voice booming with iron certainty. By the 2030s, we must complete the full deportation of illegal and low-skilled immigrants. This safeguards us. This preserves our culture. This upholds our national identity. Murmurs rippled through the seats, some slumping back with weary sighs, others jotting notes in shadowed pads for later shares. The air grew thick, laced with the scent of polished wood and stale coffee from nearby desks. And there, suddenly, Belousov stood in the aisle. No one caught his arrival, as if he'd emerged from the very folds of the parliamentary rules, a ghost in the machine. He raised no hand. Uttered no plea. Just fixed his gaze, sharp as a blade's edge. Volodin paused, mid-breath faltering. He felt it too, the shift in the room's pulse. This was no ordinary debater, whose words danced like smoke. No, this man could hold silence for hours, a coiled spring. But when he unleashed, it struck like cannon fire, reshaping the battlefield. Belousov edged closer to the speaker's table from the side, deliberate, unhurried. Vyacheslav Viktorovich, he said, voice velvet over steel, slicing without a tremor. Have you visited a Moscow construction site lately? Seen the hands laying bricks on your rooftops? Or are you importing homes now, packed flat from abroad? No chuckles broke the tension. This wasn't humor, it was a gut punch. He pressed on, eyes sweeping the chamber like a general scanning enemy lines before dawn. You propose expelling millions, just for ease? To keep foreign faces off our polished avenues? A year absent from these walls, he'd been out there, in Rostov, in Crimea, in villages near Mariupol, overseeing a new hospital's rise from the dust. The smells of fresh concrete and sweat-soaked earth still clung to him. Who lays those pipes? Who raises the walls? Ahmad, 28, from Tajikistan. One of yours to deport. His daughter's just born here, hasn't even approached me yet. He asked me, voice cracking with fear, what happens to her now? The hush deepened, heavier than fog rolling over the Volga, every breath held captive. And you? Would you tell him, thanks, Ahmad, you've done enough? Pack up. We don't need you anymore? Is that it? Belousov leaned in, the chamber's lights casting long shadows across his lined face. Vyacheslav Viktorovich, you've forgotten 1987, haven't you? The metallurgical giants we built. Kyrgyz alongside Russians, Ukrainians, Uzbeks. My father came home blackened, carrying a Tajik worker on his back after a collapse. Or do you believe Soviet migrants were different? They weren't. We just called ourselves one people then, united. He closed the gap further, Volodin's knuckles whitening on the podium's edge. 2 + 2 still equals 4. Nothing's shifted. You've just erased the memory, decided stamps and passports could sweep them away. Cameras worked faintly, lenses hungry for the fracture. 100,000 eyes, ears attuned. One voice rising above the statutes, raw and unrelenting. You aim to purge these souls, but who builds then? Who clears January's ice from our paths? Who steadies the nation while you chase slides and speeches? His stare bored into the assembly, adding softly, when I left this place, I hoped you'd matured, that you'd see beyond the illusions. The pause stretched, no applause, no rebuttals. Just Volodin's faint swallow, the room absorbing the blow like parched soil after rain. But what fury would Volodin unleash next to reclaim the floor? The tension hung thick in the air, like smoke from a distant fire. Cameras flashed red-hot, catching every glance and gesture. Andrei Rimovich had just spoken of Ahmad, the young Tajik worker, his voice cutting through the silence. A pause stretched out, heavy and pregnant with unspoken fury. Silence deepened, choking the room with unease. And now you suggest telling Ahmad, thank you, you're fine. Go ahead. We don't need you here anymore. Is that it? He snarled back, eyes narrowing like a wolf scenting weakness. Attention fixed on Vyacheslav Viktorovich. Have you really forgotten the 1987 metallurgical plants? Kyrgyz, Russians, Ukrainians, Uzbeks working side by side. My father came home with a Tajik's face etched on his back. Or do you imagine Soviet migrants were somehow different? They weren't. Back then, we called each other Soviet people. He advanced closer, voice a whisper that echoed off walls. Volodin's face stayed hard as granite, but fingers twitched, snapping like dry twigs. 2 against 2. Nothing's changed since. You simply forgot, and now you think you can banish them with borders. They're here now, rushing onward. Cameras flared with angry red. Facts twisted. 100,000 eyes, 100,000 ears. Yet one voice rose, booming over every protocol. You aim to discard these people. But who builds then? Who shovels snow in biting January? Who upholds the nation when you're lounging in presentations? He scanned the hall, adding with a bitter edge. When I left home, I dared hope you'd matured. You, too, clung to that dream. A pause fell, no applause, no murmurs. Only Volodin squeezed his phone, knuckles white. The crowd sensed it. No calm debate here. Storms were brewing. The quiet pulsed with electricity, wires straining under voltage. Volodin stumbled through his speech, losing rhythm for the first time. His words whipped like gale-force winds on open roads. No plain outrage filled the hall. Just scattered scripts lit dimly against deep shadows. Belousov didn't exploit the breach as triumph. He didn't scream. He didn't rush the podium. He stood firm, like a weathered oak on a windy hill, having endured blazes and tempests, indifferent to gusts. Volodin gathered himself, trying to steer back, forcing intonation, volume, confidence against the brewing turmoil. But his voice emerged flattened, soft yet unyielding, carrying to every corner. Ever wondered how terror sounds beneath artillery shells? Andrei Rimovich, we're discussing people broadly. Regulations. Oversight. State security. Not all migrants embody lawlessness. Understand that crime stats. Belousov's gaze darted back, sharp. And you're certain those stats hold truth? They're skewed. Question Elon. Or must I explain why? The hall teetered on the edge, breaths held, waiting for the next strike. Who controls the truth now? Will the numbers shatter or defend? What horrific cost hides behind those cold figures? The air feels charged, like a storm about to unleash fury. Belousov's eyes bore into Volodin, fingers drumming faintly on the podium. Pauses stretch like shadows lengthening. If he reveals more, will the foundation crumble? Will Volodin strike back? The tension coils tighter. Every heartbeat echoing in the silence. What if the whole chamber explodes in confrontation? Just then, Belousov's voice drops lower, a dangerous whisper. Just moments ago, chaos erupted within the sacred halls of the National Assembly. Silence suddenly shattered as an unexpected voice echoed through the chamber, carrying a weight so heavy it demanded attention. It was a voice that chilled even the bravest, calm, yet fierce with anger. Who could speak with such chilling composure? And what revelations did he unveil? The speaker, a man named Andrei Rymovich Belousov, stepped forward like a shadow cast by lightning. His presence filled the room with a sharp tension. He held a thin folder in his trembling hands, but inside, it was not a document, just a simple sheet of paper. The air grew thick with anticipation. The whispers faded. All eyes fixed on him. He spoke with a voice that seemed to cut through steel, trembling with suppressed rage. We are discussing the people, he began, the process, the regulations, the very foundation of our control. His words painted a stark picture, statistics of crime rising, illegal trade flourishing, and enclaves forming within our cities. The room's atmosphere grew darker, the sounds of murmurs and shifting papers fading into the backdrop of his voice. He demanded answers about the truth behind these figures. Do you believe the official statistics? Or are they lies? Ask Elon if you want the real story. A pause. The silence was deafening. Then, slowly, he stepped forward without raising his hand, merely observing. His eyes pierced through the crowd, revealing a hardened resolve. In a low yet intense tone, he revealed something shocking. A temporary shelter had been built for wounded foreigners near the main building. Caregivers, Kyrgyz, Uzbeks, each with stories of sacrifice. Yet, the week ended with a sudden crackdown. 2 individuals, not notified beforehand, disappeared without a trace, one headed to Dushanbe, the other to Shymkent. The house sat eerily empty. The only evidence of their existence was a folder containing letters, messages from community leaders and hospital chiefs, each conveying a simple phrase: "We did our duty, we left the promise behind." Belousov's voice grew louder, more commanding. How do we replace these lives? Robots in schools? Smart tractors from some distant presentation, he challenged, pointing directly at the assembly. The room's atmosphere tensed further as a man in the front row instinctively reached for his phone, pressing a button that seemed to freeze time. Suddenly, Belousov brought up a controversial plan. Do you want to deport all migrants by 2030? Count the numbers, he said, unfazed. He laid out a list, an unsettling tally of migrant populations in different sectors, over 10% in construction, up to 40% in some regions, and significant figures in Siberia, logistics, and beyond. The room shuddered at the implications. He resumed, if we succeed in ousting them, who will run our industries? Who will shovel snow in Ulyanovsky? Who will manage the canals in Saratov? His gaze pinned the audience in silence. Or do you think the children of our leaders will take their places? That the daughters of enemies will hold the shovels? His words echoed like a gunshot. The chamber erupted in whispers and nervous glances. Some deputies exchanged uncertain looks as the weight of his words hung heavy. One man in the back seemed to realize the gravity, his face tightening as he understood the storm that was about to come. Belousov's voice softened briefly, recounting personal stories, Tajik workers whose families he had watched grow, who had contributed to society without citizenship, risking everything for a better life. His tone turned from anger to sorrow. And now, we tell them, thank you for your work. You are no longer needed. He stepped aside, revealing documents, the true faces behind the statistics. He exposed the truth: temporary shelters filled with the injured, discarded like nothing more than numbers, Kyrgyz, Uzbeks, Tajiks. Their stories, their sacrifices, dismissed as statistics. And the government's plan? To replace humans with robots, streamline deportations, cut costs, and build a society on pre-made models. He held up a list, precise, cold, merciless, detailing migrant percentages across sectors: construction, industry, services. The figures were staggering. Over 10% in construction, up to 40% in some regions. The question was clear: if these people leave, who will keep the country standing? Who will fix the pipes, clean the streets, tend to the fields? A tense silence blanketed the room. Deputies looked down, caught between loyalty and fear. Then, Belousov delivered one final, devastating thought: sometimes, they aren't grateful. They just want a chance. But what happens when they leave? When their houses are abandoned, their families scattered? He paused, voice almost a whisper now, yet powerful enough to resonate through every corner. We are on the edge of a crisis, one that could turn our entire society into a ghetto. Not because they want it, but because we are sending them there. A shudder ran through the chamber as the reality set in. The questions haunted the minds of everyone present. Who will carry the burden? Who will rebuild what we discard? As Belousov's words echoed the truth, raw and uncompromising, the chamber sat in a heavy silence. The storm had begun, and no one knew where it would end. Just moments before, in the heated Duma chamber, Andrei Rymovich Belousov, the steel-forged minister, had slammed down his damning list right on the tribune before Volodin. He unleashed a brutal question that cut like a cold blade: if we deport every migrant by 2030, who's left to slave in our cities? Migrants aren't just numbers, they're the backbone of construction, logistics, everything. Over 10% in building trades alone. In Moscow's vast sprawl, up to 40%. Siberia's frozen expanses swell even higher. Housing services hit 25%. Logistics? Nearly 1/3. Picture it, that relentless crunch under boots as workers haul brick from dawn to dusk, the wet slap of mud on concrete slabs. He tossed the list there, defiance in his eyes. Or will your elite spawn, the notary's son, the CEO's kid, grab hammers and clear snow from Ulyanovsk's icy roads? Shovels clutched by the banker's daughter in Saratov's choking canals? The hall froze. A few bodies shifted uneasily. Back row camera lights flickered like predatory eyes. One deputy faked a yawn, but his facade cracked. He sensed the storm brewing. Sweat beaded on brows. Fingers clenched armrests. A subtle hum of tension filled the air, like wires buzzing under unseen pressure. Belousov prowled forward, his voice a low rumble. You'll excise them, drive them away, and watch your economy collapse. They'll vanish into shadows, black markets, off-grid jobs. No papers. No taxes. No safety nets. Just hollow desperation. And then? True ghettos erupt, not by their design, but yours. You'll push them there with your blind decrees. He paused. The weight of silence heavier than a hammer blow. Then he added, his tone sharpening like a twist in fate, do you really believe they'll thank you for that knife in the back? Murmurs rippled. Palms pressed against cool wood tables. Someone shielded a phone under the desk. Young faces tilted back in chairs, eyes widening, they glimpsed the abyss. Today, it's not politics, it's humanity versus status. A choice that could shatter nations. Belousov pressed on, his words weaving an unexpected turn, digging into raw empathy. Flashback to 1998. The economic crunch hit like a blizzard sting, papers rustling in dim office light, stale coffee fumes mingling with cigarette ash. Ruslan, my Azerbaijani colleague, skin rough from years of toil, voice hoarse from shouting orders, hunkered with me in the finance department. Times were grim for all. Worse for him. No citizenship. No lifeline. He rode the metro one night and vanished. Killed just for looking foreign. Not a worker. A scapegoat. Yet Ruslan's spirit endured. He clawed his way up, building an empire from scraps. 10 years later, he erected a school in Derbent. For his people. For this country. Because he bled for it. But now, Belousov leaned into the microphone, almost whispering, what do you say to him? Thanks, now leave? The auditorium tensed, breaths shallow. Hands pressed firmer. Was this the bitter betrayal, and what thunderous retaliation awaited? His voice dropped lower, eyes scanning the silent ranks. Ruslan's gone, but men like him built Russia. Ingeniously. Silently. And now, these hollow elite want to erase that legacy? Their arrogance stinks of fear. Will you thank them, or finally awaken from this propagandist haze? Mapping plastic cities, while real flesh and blood crumble? He clutched the folder tighter, paper crinkling like a final whisper. What if this deportation ignites the real revolt? The one we've all been dreading, the human backlash that drowns gilded halls in chaos? Belousov stepped back, but his gaze lingered like a haunting specter, as if daring anyone to shatter this fragile illusion. The hall simmered, edges fraying, waiting for the dam to break. What hidden fractures would explode next? Just 5 minutes ago, a storm erupted in the heart of the nation's parliament. A scandal so shocking it left everyone breathless. In the chamber's tense atmosphere, voices clashed like thunder. The air was thick with anticipation, and every eye was fixed on the man who was about to shake the foundations of governance. This isn't just politics, it's a raw confrontation with deep-rooted fears and unresolved conflicts. Prepare for a story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about power, loyalty, and betrayal. The scene opens with a figure walking into the hall like a shadow slipping past. No applause, no fanfare, just silent, deliberate steps that echo with purpose. His face is pale, his eyes darkened by exhaustion, yet his presence commands immediate attention. You can feel the weight of history behind him, the years of struggle etched into every line of his face. As he approaches, the murmurs die down. Something ominous is about to unfold. What secrets does he carry? What truth is he about to unveil? Watch closely, what happens next will change everything. In his hands, he holds a thin folder, but behind those fragile pages lies a storm. His movements are slow, measured, like a predator stalking its prey. The hall's energy shifts. Deputies whisper nervously, their faces tight with concern. The silence is oppressive, punctuated only by the rustling of paper and the distant hum of the ventilation. Suddenly, he steps forward. His voice, soft yet piercing, cuts through the tension. If you reject the digital pension, you decide your own fate, he declares. A deafening pause follows. The room's temperature seems to drop. Eyes widen. Stakes have never been higher. What will be revealed next? The chapter has only just begun. He begins to unfold the grim reality, speaking about the migrant crisis that threatens the very fabric of the nation. The smell of stale air mixes with the metallic tang of suppressed tension. Who weeds the streets with their labor? Who sends their children to school? Or do they come from faraway lands, trapped in a cycle of hardship? His words land like thunderclaps. Each sentence reveals a deeper layer, the stories of those forgotten, abandoned in the shadows. The hall seems to tighten around him, as if the walls themselves are listening. Can this truth be silenced? Or will it ignite a revolution? He targets the heart of the political system, exposing the hypocrisy of promises and the false comfort of superficial reforms. You talk about order, he says sharply, but behind closed doors, chaos reigns. The borders are just lines on a map, easily crossed. Our people suffer while you shuffle papers and spin lies. The crowd reacts, some shudder, others fidget nervously. The tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Then, with unwavering clarity, he reveals shocking statistics: over 10% of construction workers are migrants, up to 40% in regions like Moscow. The figures scream betrayal. Who will face the consequences? Who will be held accountable? The room is on the brink of explosion. A pause hangs in the air. He points to a list: names, numbers, undeniable truths. Do you think we can keep this hidden? The truth is, entire districts are built on unpaid labor. On illegal trades, on unregistered lives. And who benefits? Not the country's future, but the shadowy figures pulling strings behind the scenes. His gaze sharpens. When will we stop the deception? When will we finally take responsibility? A deafening silence follows, broken only by the distant hum of machinery or the faint tremor of falling dust. The moment is frozen in time. Will change come, or will it be buried under layers of lies? Then, he steps even closer, voice dropping to a near whisper. You think these people are just numbers? They are fathers, mothers, children living on the edge of despair. He's a Tajik, his daughter born just days ago. He's been working tirelessly, risking everything to send his family a better life, even in the frost of winter. But what do you tell him? Thank you for your service, and then dismiss him as if he were nothing? The room falls silent. The weight of his words sinks deep. Can the core of a nation be so callous? Or is there still hope for change? He takes a step back, eyes scanning the room, every hardened face, every clenched fist. I know what's happening inside this hall, he continues. You're afraid. afraid of losing control. But real strength lies in honesty, in facing the truth head-on, no matter how uncomfortable it makes us. The air seems to vibrate with unspoken questions. Will we continue to hide behind walls, or will we finally break free? What price are we willing to pay for transparency? The moment has reached its boiling point, the future hangs in the balance. As his words echo into the silence, a new figure emerges from the shadows. Quiet. Deliberate, almost invisible. He stands there not to threaten but to expose. His presence is like a cold wind sweeping through the hall, mysterious, undeniable. He doesn't raise his voice. Instead, he simply looks, piercing through the tension, through the masks, through the lies. Everyone notices. Whispers ripple through the assembly. Who is this man? What secrets does his gaze hide? The story, it seems, is far from over. In this room of power and broken promises, one question remains: will the truth finally break through the walls of indifference? Or will it be silenced forever? The storm is gathering. The time for silence has passed. The choice is ours. 5 minutes ago, chaos erupted in the heart of the legislature. A sudden political storm unfolded as a controversial decision was announced. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with anticipation and suspicion. Deputies watched in silence as a figure entered the hall, calm, deliberate, almost ghost-like, shifting the course of history with every step. This was no ordinary moment. It was a turning point. Inside, whispers of fear and anger circulated. A message that could shatter the fragile unity of the nation. Suddenly, a voice cut through the silence. Sharp, commanding, filled with a weight that demanded attention. The speaker, dressed in dark attire, held a slim folder, yet what he carried inside was more powerful than any weapon. His eyes, dark and unwavering, glanced around the room as if memorizing every face. The tension mounted as he approached the central table, his footsteps echoing like distant thunder. He paused, eyes fixed on the assembly. The standard protocol was broken. There were no introductions, no pleasantries. Just raw honesty. His voice, soft but piercing, began to unravel truths no one dared to confront. We stand at a crossroads, he said. Our borderlines are not just demarcations on a map, they are living veins, pulsing with the blood of forgotten communities. He showed photographs, images of makeshift shelters, families living in limbo, buildings razed without oversight. Names, ages, stories, all laid bare. Faces of workers, Uzbeks, Kyrgyz, Russians, fighting to survive, to belong, to find meaning amid chaos. His words painted a vivid picture of the struggle. The smell of burnt wood, the roughness of unyielding concrete, the cold touch of steel in the early mornings. The sound of distant machinery, rustling papers, whispered fears. In those moments, every deputy felt a shiver, an all-encompassing realization that the very fabric of their society was fraying. He continued, voice growing firmer. People are not waves to be swept aside. They are individuals. Like our own. Like my grandfather, standing guard, not for power, but for survival. Memories flickered, images of his grandfather working tirelessly in a forest, building bridges, schools, restoring what war had scarred. Did we forget this? He asked. This land once brought together by sweat and sacrifice. Now, we talk about tearing it apart, shutting the gates, pushing away those who seek only security and a better life. His hand gripped the folder tighter. Look at these photos. Our workers, these are neighbors, fathers, brothers. Yet, some call them invaders. They built the foundations of this land. They are the backbone, the true face of Russia. A heavy silence followed. The room seemed to freeze. The weight of unspoken truths pressed down. The deputy's voice turned into a whisper. Are they enemies? Or are they part of us? He stepped closer, each movement deliberate. What will happen when these walls crumble under neglect? When entire communities are left to fall into despair? A flicker of movement caught his eye, a young man, visibly anxious, clutching a knife on the floor. No words were spoken. Just the shared understanding of a country on the brink. The white man from the back slowly rose. Calm. Yet formidable. His presence silent but deafening. The assembly held its breath. His gaze fixed on the floor, then turned to the crowd. Are migrants just waves to be drowned? He questioned. Or people with hopes, fears, families? Do you realize this is not merely a political issue, it's about human dignity? He took a step forward. The room felt the weight of his words. In the past, no one asked about origins. My own family, Russian, Uzbek, Kyrgyz, they built this land together. And now, some want to erase that history. He looked around, voice rising. We have drafted plans to ship thousands back, to chase shadows. But do you see the faces? The stories? The lives that will be shattered? The hall grew heavier. Every eye now fixed on him. The tension palpable, like a storm ready to break. Outside, the wind howled an echo of the chaos inside. Pay attention, he continued, voice unwavering. This is not just about borders. It's about identity, culture, the soul of our nation. If we abandon these founders, what are we left with? A pause. Silence stretched like a chasm. Then he made his final plea. You think they will be grateful when thrown aside? Think again. They will retreat to the shadows. Small ghettos, forgotten corners destined to become self-made worlds of despair. He paused, voice trembling with emotion. And when that happens, who will bear the scars? Who will fix this torn fabric? A murmur raced through the hall. Deputies exchanged worried glances. The truth was undeniable, a storm was brewing. His words left a mark, an undeniable call for reflection. The room, once controlled, now teetered on chaos. It felt as though the walls themselves were trembling. A storm was truly coming. In that moment, the question hung in the air, are we really ready to face the choices that will define our future? In the heart of the assembly hall, a tense silence hangs, thick like fog. The air is filled with the scent of anticipation and unspoken fears. Suddenly, a quiet, deliberate figure moves forward, Vasily Ulyi, the defense minister, walking with purpose. His face is expressionless, but inside, a storm brews. Minutes ago, chaos erupted here, a clash of words, accusations, and unresolved conflicts. Now, he stands alone, the weight of the nation's unrest pressing down on him. Imagine this, a man walks into a room where chaos used to echo. No fanfare, no noise, just a calm, almost ghostly presence. Like a relic from another era, he moves through this modern monument of power, bearing only a thin folder, a silent symbol of the brewing storm. His eyes, dark and tired, betray the exhaustion of battles fought and alliances broken. His steps echo softly on the cold, polished floor, each one a reminder that no one leaves unscathed here. The hall remains hushed. Young deputies whisper among themselves, nervously clutching their tablets, sensing that something pivotal is unfolding. On the dais, Vyacheslav Volodin, the parliamentary leader, speaks with unwavering authority, announcing with conviction that illegal immigration must be eradicated. The words are sharp, precise. He speaks of safety, of preserving the cultural fabric. But beneath his tone, a question lingers, are we truly prepared for the costs of such purity? Then, from the shadows, a figure appears, a silent observer, a witness to the game of power. Without a word, he steps closer. The room's atmosphere thickens. The tension is palpable. Like electricity charging the air before a storm. The voice of this stranger is soft but cuts through the silence like a blade, an unspoken challenge. Have you seen who builds your towers in Moscow? Who carries the bricks? Who pulls the cable networks? Do you even know who lives behind those uniforms? A heavy silence falls again. The debate spirals into dangerous territories, numbers, statistics, fears. Numbers that tell a story, a narrative of migration, crime, and social upheaval. The hall is flooded with visuals, charts, lists. Migrants form a significant part of vital sectors, more than 10% in construction, nearly 40% in Moscow alone, with Siberia and other regions following suit. The figures are stark, unyielding. The stranger's gaze pierces through the crowd. If we push them out, who will do the work? Who will build the future? Should we forget their stories, the fathers, the children? Do we risk turning our society into a fortress, isolated and cold? His words hang like a weight, seeping into every corner of the room. The question is clear, what is the cost of fear? He takes a step forward, holding a folder, its contents a mirror of harsh truths. Letters from local leaders, from families, from workers, stories of hope, sacrifice, and struggle. Like a heartbeat, the room pulses with emotion and tension. Each name, each number a reminder that real lives are intertwined with these statistics. That beneath every figure lies a face, a story. Suddenly, the room erupts into a stunned silence. Eyes widen, breaths catch. Who will stand against this tide? Will the nation hold its ground or drown in fear? The moment is fragile, teetering on the brink of chaos or clarity. Because, in truth, the real danger isn't in the numbers, but in losing the honor, the respect for human lives that define us all. The voice of the man from the shadows continues, calm yet resolute. We are risking our unity. We are risking everything we fought for: our identity, our future. The borders are not just lines on a map, they are the essence of who we are. But what happens when we forget that? When we treat people as threats instead of fellow travelers? Remember, our ancestors built this land not out of fear, but out of respect and shared destiny. He pauses, letting the silence settle. Open your eyes, he says softly. Your walls won't protect you forever. But your values, your honor, are what truly define us. It's not about nationality, it's about humanity. And humanity demands we see each other, not as enemies, but as part of the same story. The hall remains silent. Every eye fixed on him. Every heart pounding with unspoken questions. Because the line between order and chaos is razor thin. And the future? It hangs delicately in the balance. Are we prepared to face it, with dignity, or with fear? The answer lies hidden in the shadows of this room. And as he steps back into the darkness, leaving behind a question that echoes long after, the question remains: are we willing to sacrifice our humanity for safety? A shift in perception is happening right now, right here. The core of the problem isn't just the people, it's how we see them. We rely on passports, appearances, and labels. We judge by what's visible. Inside the hall, silence reigns. The tension is palpable. But behind the scenes, something even more troubling is unfolding. A man advances, almost unnoticed, like a shadow slipping past. He's not here to destroy. He's here to work. Yet, his presence stirs unease. Cameras keep rolling. Viewers from across the nation watch, millions reacting, sharing, debating. The words flash through social media. The public's reaction is raw, unfiltered. Some remember stories of the past, others exchange whispered fears in messenger apps. Conversations resembling heated debates, historical echoes, and personal memories collide. I think of my father, a worker alongside Tajik laborers. We're told they're strangers, yet without them, our lives would crumble. Their sacrifices built the nation. Their blood and sweat are woven into our history. My own identity as Russian feels intertwined with theirs. Without them, everything collapses. They are everywhere, building, repairing, essential. Yet, society fears their presence, labels them, and pushes them aside. If we truly want to save the future, we must confront this reality. It's not about hate or exclusion. It's about memory, reminding ourselves of shared struggles, of common roots. The time has come to recognize the truth. Not out of fear, but out of respect for what we've built together. It's a foundation forged in hardship and unity. Suddenly, an unexpected wave hits the hall. Someone breaks the silence by sharing a personal story. A voice emerges from the depths, raw, genuine. It shifts the atmosphere. The tension transforms into understanding. Maybe, just maybe, we can still be united. If we're willing. If we remember. If we look beyond surface labels and see the human beneath. One person's words echo louder than laws, louder than policies. They remind us our strength lies in our unity, in our shared past. As the room breathes in this newfound awareness, a decision hangs in the air. Actions will follow. The course of the nation is being rewritten. Not through fear or violence, but through recognition of our collective humanity. This moment, this pause, could define everything. Or it might be lost amid forgotten words. The choice is ours. Will we remember the past? Will we change the future? Only time will tell. In a tense moment, the hall was filled with a weight of silence and almost oppressive stillness. It felt as if the country itself held its breath, waiting for the next move. Then, as if summoned by some unseen force, a quiet but firm voice cut through the room. It wasn't shouting, it was a calm, deliberate challenge that sent shockwaves through everyone present. Imagine entering an arena where opponents are used to counting on raw numbers, not emotion. They argue about the futility of effort, about how life feels like navigating hostile asphalt, cold, unyielding. One of the speakers, visibly exhausted, almost broken, called out these harsh truths. He stood there, face marked with fatigue, shoulders heavy with a decision that felt fragile yet necessary, acknowledging reality, no matter how painful. The room was riddled with the sound of each word, each syllable, stabbing like shards cutting through a fragile illusion. He pointed to the economic mess, an image of chaos painted on a digital screen. The second file opened quietly in his folder, raw, unedited data. 12% of the country's gross domestic product comes from construction. That's not just Moscow, it's the entire nation from Vladivostok to Pskov. 1/3 of all construction work relies on migrant labor. Without these workers, productivity drops by 30%. Some regions see up to 45% of their workforce CNG workers, service workers, those who handle trash, mend pipes, support daily life. Who else will do these tasks? The hall grew colder as the grim reality set in. Someone from the crowded corridor threw a glance, an almost desperate plea. The scene was raw, Russian neighborhoods, where communal teams keep the systems running, now facing a labor crisis. Boots on the ground, hands pressed to communal pipes, citizens straining under the weight of neglect. The hall resonated with unspoken questions. Who will replace these workers? Will robots ever truly fill these gaps? The answer seemed distant, elusive. Then, the speaker unveiled another stark truth. In the regions, up to 45% of construction workers are illegal migrants, their presence unregistered, their work unprotected. Who will clean the streets? Who will manage the logistics? Without them, the entire economic chain risks collapsing. The scene shifted, yielding a vivid image of abandoned warehouses, uncollected trash, a city on the edge. But the hardest truth, automation isn't a cure-all. Robots, artificial intelligence, they can't replace human effort entirely. In villages, mountain communities, remote towns, systems still rely on a fragile web of human hands. The hall became still, heavy with unspoken fears. A question hung in the air: who will pick up the pieces if these vital workers vanish? Amidst all this chaos, a simple yet powerful figure emerged. He was silent at first, then spoke softly. In the past, we thought these problems could be fixed with temporary solutions. That was a mistake. Now, the wounds are deeper. The country's foundation is cracking under the weight of neglect. No quick fix will rebuild the trust or the stability we've lost. He looked around, voice growing more intense. When will we finally face the truth? Or will we keep pretending everything's fine? His words echoed through the hall, vibrating with anger and despair. The room was tense, every ear tuned, every eye fixed on the silent storm brewing in that voice. It was a call to wake up, a plea for honesty in a nation slipping into chaos. The hall's silence thickened, charged with emotion. Yet, beneath that calm exterior was a deadly certainty: the cost of ignoring these issues would be higher than anyone dared to imagine. The future hung in balance, waiting for someone brave enough to confront it. Are we watching the fall of our strongest pillars? Or are we capable of rebuilding from these ruins? The answer lies in what we choose next. In the previous moments, Ilasov slammed the proposal to deport migrants, revealing harsh realities of who builds hospitals, clears snow, and sustains the nation. Workers like smugglers living in shadows, feeding economies while being discarded like burdens. Stirring tensions erupted as another deputy, young from the digital faction, rose with a voice sharp as cracking ice, nails on a chalkboard, echoing a fanatic's zeal for a sterile utopia. He sneered, "Andrei Aramovich, as an economist, you fail to grasp the surge in tech sectors. Automation surges, robots handle production, e-commerce integrates solutions seamlessly." Ilasov, unflinching, sliced through the boast like a rusty blade. No mercy. "Lies," he growled, his tone gravelly, fingers gripping the air as if throttling doubt. He unleashed memories of Christian and Voronezh, where homes rose from scavenged roofs, tools crammed into a single backpack amidst the stench of sweat-soaked earth. Stepping down swiftly, he snatched a map from the table, unrolling it with a whip-crack snap. Regions bleeding, migrant sweat, dots like bleeding wounds. This is our land, he hissed, breath heavy with coal dust grit. Reality bites, 32 areas where no tech drone dares hover, no polished app bridges the gaps, migrant toil mirroring brain drain voids. The deputy sneered again, thousands of workers aren't slaves, their skills obsolete. But Belousov leaned in, eyes narrowing to slits, his whisper clawing the silence. Have you ever gripped sandpaper burns from digging trenches? Inhaled diesel fumes while pouring concrete under pounding rain? Watched a father send every ruble home for stale bread? You label them burdens. Paused, the hall crackled with electric dread, deputies shifting as if needles pricked their seats. A younger member grimaced, trapped in the riffraff's mire, transforming the chamber into a desperate courtroom judgment. Belousov pressed on, voice a thunderclap, fists trembling. You fear hordes stealing schools, jobs, futures. I dread your hollow echo, nation crippled, hands severed, minds blanked. Economy isn't a machine, it's a throbbing pulse. Ripping it out leaves ruin. One cough echoed. Chairs creaked. And in that heartbeat, betrayal hung thick as fog before the plunge. Will the chamber fracture further? What ghostly cost lurks if voices fall silent? In the earlier moment, anger simmered as the White Owl called out the hall's fear of loss to migrants, urging them to see work as the country's beating heart. If pulled out, it dies. The air grew thick with unspoken dread, like fog clinging to bare branches on a frosty dawn. Belousov pulled out another sheet of paper, its edges crisp and unyielding under his fingers, revealing a stark chart. Who else buys the affordable essentials, the bread on every table, the simple coat against winter's bite? Migrants lift those burdens, propelling businesses forward. Businesses you all cling to during elections, the lifeblood of prosperity. Yet, push them out? The market could crumble, stalls emptying, revenues vanishing, Russian life without that vital flow. A voice cut through from mid-hall, sharp with cynicism. But we Russians should come first, foreigners second. Belousov turned slowly, his gaze steady as a rock undercurrents. It's not harshness, it's survival. Russianness isn't stamped in a passport. It's etched in your soul. The words hit like an echo in a vast cavern, reverberating off cold stone walls, making ears ring. Everyone sensed the shift, no more empty boasts, just the pull of truth tugging at consciences. He leaned in further. I've lived it Russian in spirit, my kids calling this land home. Absurd? No. That's me, side by side with smiles from Shymkent, wives who hold families together, knowing without their toil, no homestands. The president watched, not as a rival, but as a cracked mirror reflecting what we've built yet ignored to change. Losing it all, not from malice, but forgetting, the economy isn't a distant dream, it's the bread in your mouth. Choose who bakes it wrong, and you're left with slideshows, hollow promises. He returned to the Tribune, setting papers down with the weariness of a soldier's final stand. I'm not defending migrants, I'm defending us. A nation of honor, where people respect each other, where conscience trumps paper. He fixed his eyes on the camera lens, voice dropping to a hush that amplified urgency. I speak to the people at home, the weavers of quiet strength, the savvy workers, hear me. Because in making this choice, we're all on the edge, one misstep from a silent nation starved of its own heart. What twist will humiliate the arrogant elites next? Will their polished halls crumble without the unseen hands that build them? You've seen the chart, feel the chill now? Just moments ago, a seismic shock rattled the depths of government chambers. The atmosphere was thick with tension, as if the very air vibrated with the implications of the unfolding drama. A figure, silent and commanding, entered the hall, no noise, no fanfare, just the weight of unspoken truths pressing against the walls. His presence felt like a storm approaching, a storm that would reveal the hidden cracks in the foundation of the nation. This man, the Minister of Defense, carries the aura of a battlefield veteran, face weathered by countless battles, eyes dark with the fatigue of endless conflict. Clad in black, he walked steadily, clutching a thin folder, but inside, no documents, only questions that threatened to tear the fabric of the status quo. The room breathes in anticipation, every heartbeat echoing like a drumbeat of impending change. The corridors are alive with whispers. A group of young deputies huddle, voices hushed but eyes wide with curiosity. They listen as the veteran speaks of the chaos of clashes over policies that divide rather than unite. Words hang heavy in the air, almost tangible, as he outlines the crisis: illegal immigration, economic strain, the burgeoning gap between the state's ideals and its realities. His voice, steady yet charged with emotion, paints a stark picture. The fabric of society is fraying, and the threads are pulling apart. He gestures towards a map, pointing out regions where migrant populations surge, areas now pulsing with unrest. His tone sharpens as he questions, who will stand when the snow covers our streets? Who will lead when our borders are blurred? The crowd is silent, absorbing the magnitude of his words. In that silence, a piercing question lingers. Are we on the brink of losing our identity? The air smells of cold metal and burning wood, a metaphor for the steel backbone of the nation strained to its breaking point. Suddenly, a figure steps onto the stage, an older man, deliberate and calm. His voice, soft but unwavering, slices through the tense silence. He recalls the past, metallurgical giants from decades ago, diverse workers united by a common purpose. His memories evoke images of faces from different nations and the collective pride of a united Soviet Union. But now, the scene has shifted. He pauses, eyes scanning the audience, asking, do you remember how it was when migrants were part of us? Do you realize we are losing our soul? His words hang like a heavy curtain, cloaking the room in reflection and unease. The debate intensifies. The room feels like a battlefield of ideas, a clash of cultures and identities. Metallic echoes of machinery and whispers of history seem to drown out the present. The old man's voice softens. We are a nation built on orthodoxy, Cyrillic, Pushkin, and Dostoevsky. If we don't protect these, our culture, our language, nothing will remain. His appeal is urgent, almost desperate. The question is clear: will we stand guard over what defines us, or will we let the tides of change wash away our heritage? As shadows lengthen across the chamber, the atmosphere thickens with anticipation of what's to come. The future hangs in the balance, an unspoken verdict weighing heavily on every soul present. The hall is silent now, but within that silence lurks a storm of uncertainty, whether the nation will hold firm or succumb to the pressures that threaten to reshape it forever. In a moment charged with tension, the atmosphere thick with unspoken fears, the room was silent but for the faint hum of distant voices. The debate had reached its boiling point, an intense confrontation about identity, loyalty, and the future of the nation itself. The air was heavy, filled with the scent of anticipation and the sharp tang of old fear. Everyone knew something profound was about to unfold. Suddenly, from the corner of the hall, eyes drew upwards to the gallery where young students of Zerfikov watched intently. They already understood where the conversation was headed, each glance revealing their awareness of the impending storm. Vladimir, standing firm, embodied the heart of the nation, yet his gaze was calm, almost resigned. Behind him, the flag fluttered slightly, as if trembling with suppressed emotion. Vladimir's voice broke the silence. They will remember us for who we truly are. His words lingered, the weight of history pressed upon them. The Belarusian delegate remained silent, their eyes fixed on the distant horizon, like a general gazing at a battlefield they hoped to avoid. Vladimir, sensing the silence, pressed on. I grew up in Saratov. I've heard stories. They said we are Russians, and I have always believed in that. Now, all I hear is different languages, voices that don't belong to my land. He paused, the echo of his words vibrating in the tense silence. I am not against diversity, but this is not my culture. Not my homeland. His voice grew firmer. Patriotism isn't about exclusion. It's about protecting what is ours. He looked at the crowd, his eyes shining with steadfast resolve. If we become fewer, and they become more, what will be left of us? Without waiting for a reply, Vladimir took a step forward. His gaze turned to the majority in the hall, those whose minds he sought to awaken. Suddenly, a young man from the center, an ordinary face, but with a fire burning behind his eyes, stood up. His voice was steady but filled with emotion. What about those born here? Studied here? Speak Russian, dream Russian. Are they not our people? Vladimir nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth in his words. Exactly. Yet, some want to erase that history, erase us. His tone sharpened, a mixture of hope and warning. Are we ready to let that happen? Or will we defend what's left? A hush fell. The tension was palpable, everyone felt it crackling around them. The hall seemed to hold its breath, the walls echoing the weight of what was said. Vladimir's opponent hesitated, his face unreadable, but his eyes betrayed uncertainty. Then, in a stern whisper, Vladimir added, "This is our culture. Our language. Our history. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room, some hesitant, some defiant. The debate had shifted from words to silent questions, and the scar of that moment would linger. The future hung in the balance, as every listener wondered whether their country could remain united or if it would fracture beyond repair. The room's silence was deafening, yet inside each person, a storm was brewing. A clash of identities, of loyalties, of the very soul of the nation. Who would stand and who would falter? The answer lay just beneath the surface, waiting to be revealed. Just moments ago, a firestorm erupted in the heart of the nation's parliament. A scandal so shocking that it sent shockwaves through every corridor, every chamber, every ear. On November 19, a dramatic turn of events unfolded as a settlement was reinstated for Vasily Ulyi and Vinovnik Hausa, key figures in a clandestine struggle. Andrei Rimovich, Belousov, names now etched in history, almost a year since the chaos in parliament, yet the dust was far from settling. The room was tense, an atmosphere thick with unspoken truths. Words flew like shrapnel, fierce and cutting. Belousov's accusations struck harder than a lightning bolt, igniting fury among the deputies. Amidst this chaos, the echoes of conflict and the distant sounds of unrest in Central Asia seemed to resonate. Stay with us to the very end, you won't believe what unfolds next. Support us by liking, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Do you stand with Belousov and his unwavering stance, or are you closer to the side that prefers silence? Let's dive into the story. He approached the chamber like a man walking to his fate, without noise, without fanfare. No applause, no cheers, just the silent anticipation of what's to come. It was reminiscent of a battlefield's quiet before the storm and ominous stillness. Like a visitor in a modern art museum, he carried a worn folder, its leather cracked, its contents unknown, yet heavy with significance. A symbol of the impending storm. Andrei Rimovich, Belousov, the man was the embodiment of authority now. Once a soldier in quiet service, he had become a symbol of defiance. His face was grim, lines carved by years of struggle. Eyes dark and intense, like a storm cloud ready to burst. Clothes darkened by the weight of responsibility, reminiscent of archives stored in financial crises. He gripped a slim folder in his trembling hands, not with documents, but with purpose. He moved slowly through the hall, each step echoing like the tolling of a bell resonant and final. The deputies, some reading, some fidgeting, each sensed the gravity. No one dared disturb the silence as Vyacheslav Volodin, a person of unwavering resolve, took his stand. With a commanding voice, he declared, in 2030, we must complete the purge of illegal, low-skilled immigration. His words hammered like thunder, urgent, undeniable. Suddenly, chaos erupted again, the room tensed, and some deputies faltered. The air grew heavy, thick with anticipation of what was coming. Out of nowhere, a figure appeared, a silent, almost ghost-like, moving between the ranks of regulation and authority. No hand raised, no voice called out, just a presence that demanded attention. The room fell silent when he gazed at Volodin, his stare piercing, unyielding. With a calm but firm tone, he approached slowly, placing himself before the main table. The whispers stopped dead. Steel in his voice, he asked, "You've long been in the construction business in Moscow. Have you seen who's laying the bricks on your rooftops? Or do you merely carry pallets from foreign ships, waiting to be taken home in boxes?" No laughter or mockery, just tense silence. He pressed on, his words sinking in like weighted stones. You suggest sending millions abroad, just to keep things comfortable. But at what cost? Who will build the future, if not the very people who live on our streets? Who will hold the country when the chaos comes? He looked out over the hall, eyes blazing. The heaviness of his words lingered as he asked yet again, when I left my home, I hoped our children would grow with hope, not fear. But that hope is slipping away, replaced by silence and despair. The tension in the hall intensified, the silence now almost tangible. Every ear tuned to his steady voice. He pointed to a list, numbers, facts, stories of lives affected. More than 10% of workers in construction are migrants, he stated bluntly. In Moscow, it reaches 40%. Siberia, 25%. Logistics, almost a third. His voice cut through the room like a blade. He challenged the assembly, if we dismiss these people, who will run the factories, who will tend the fields? Who will keep the country moving? If we push them away, Who will rebuild the bridges during winter, clear the snow in January? His gaze hardened, placing the list before Volodin like an accusation. Or do you believe the son of a high official will take the shovel? Or the daughter of a political leader will work in the fields? A silence descended, heavy with unspoken truths and fear. The hall was shrinking, the deputies' faces pale with realization. Some shifted, some looked away. One, in the back row, a young deputy, caught the camera's eye and subtly nodded, acknowledging the inevitable. The room was on the brink, each person aware that today's debate might define the nation's future. Belousov stepped forward, his voice rich with emotion. I have a friend, named Ruslan, from Azerbaijan. We worked together in 1998, back when everything was falling apart. No citizenship, no support, just survival. He was killed in the subway simply because he looked different. An innocent life lost because of ignorance. 10 years later, he built a school in Derbent, for his community. A true patriot. He paused, voice trembling with suppressed emotion. And now you tell him thank you, and move on? You think they're grateful? While we build statues, they're abandoned. Are they to be forever grateful for their suffering? His words hung in the air, an urgent plea. You forget that in 1987, the construction boom was driven by workers from Kyrgyzstan, Ukraine, Uzbekistan. My father returned from the city bearing a Tajik face, reminding us that we once saw migrants as brothers. Yet today, we turn against them, forgetting our own history. He stepped closer to the assembly, voice rising. Do you believe they want to remain in shadows? They seek only a chance to participate, to contribute, to be part of Russia's future. But if you push them away, what future awaits us? Ghettos? Invisible zones? Without registration, without rights, they will live lives of despair. He fixed his gaze on Volodin, challenging, maybe you think those in power will be grateful. But they won't. They'll retreat to the shadows, hiding behind walls. And you, the ruling class, will be left with fears, fear of the unknown, fear of losing control. He finished with a piercing question, and what about those who gave everything, who built? Who served? Will they be cast aside? The real tragedy is not just numbers, it's the people's lives. And you? You're about to make your worst mistake yet. Silence spread thickly. A few deputies shifted uncomfortably. In the back, an aide looked down, brow furrowed, realizing the storm had only just begun. The battle lines were drawn, and the country hung in the balance, a nation facing its own reflection, caught between fear and hope. As the room held its breath, Belousov's words echoed warning, demanding action. But in that silence, a question lingered, one that would define whether the country would stand united or crumble under the weight of its own fears. Just minutes ago, a sudden storm erupted inside the Russian parliament. A scandal so explosive, it sent shockwaves through the chamber, leaving everyone speechless. As the echoes faded, a powerful figure entered the room, carrying an unassuming folder, yet wielding words sharper than any weapon. The tension was palpable, like a storm about to burst. What secrets would be revealed? And who would be humiliated next? The man moved deliberately, his footsteps echoing like a heartbeat in a silent stadium. His face was grim, eyes dark as a storm cloud, barely hiding the fire within. He approached the center of the hall, clutching a slim folder, yet in his eyes glowed the weight of history's undone. No fanfare, no noise, just a calculated walk toward the epicenter of chaos. The atmosphere thickened, heavy with anticipation, as if the air itself was holding its breath. What truths lay hidden beneath that quiet exterior? He approached the podium slowly, every step resonating like a strike of thunder. Without raising his voice, he cut through the silence with a voice as cold as steel. In the year 2030, he began softly, we will be forced to confront a brutal reality, the mass deportation of illegal immigrants. Is this what our country has become, an economic machine built on exclusion? His words hit like a hammer, igniting a roar of outrage among some. But others fell silent, stunned by the audacity, a question lingering in every mind, how far are we willing to go? He unfolded the thin folder, revealing a list, more than 100,000 names, each bearing a story, a life. Migrants from all over. Their numbers staggering, more than 10% in construction alone. In some regions, the figure soared to 40%. Siberia, the capital, the railway hubs, all filled with the silent presence of those considered outsiders. If we deport them all, he asked, who will build our cities? Who will fill the empty streets? Who will keep the country alive? The silence grew heavier, as if the walls themselves were listening. Then, he pointed at the list, his finger trembling slightly. Who will be responsible? Who will remove the snow from our roads in January? Who will mend the broken pipes during the coldest nights? His gaze was piercing, daring anyone to deny the stark truth before them. We are on the brink, he warned, voice trembling with emotion. Soon, these people will be pushed into ghettos, zones of despair, without hope, without rights. And you think they will thank us? Think again. His words, a mixture of pain and anger, sank into the room like a dagger. A hush fell, broken only by the faint sounds of shifting papers and nervous breathing. One deputy, in the back row, seemed to realize that this was not just a speech, it was a challenge. A declaration that the country's future was at stake. The man's voice softened, but carried the weight of a verdict. He was a friend. I knew him. Ruslan and Azerbaijani worked with me in 1998. Back then, everyone was struggling. But Ruslan, despite lacking citizenship, built a school for children in Derbent. For himself, because he considered his future part of this land. Now, you're telling him to thank us while we cast him aside? He hesitated, then pressed on. Each word a blow to complacency. Remember, in 1987, when we built metallurgical factories, we employed migrants from Kyrgyzstan, Ukraine, Uzbekistan. We called them Soviet people. We returned in trucks, in trains, silent, invisible. Nothing has changed. Just the labels. They are the same people, with hopes, dreams, and burdens. His voice cracked slightly, voice laden with memories. He moved closer to the center, his face hard as stone. You forget, he said quietly, that these migrants are not just statistics. They are the backbone of our economy. They're the ones fixing the roofs, laying bricks, running the factories. But soon, they will be thrown out, marked as enemies, and who will suffer then? Our cities, our industries? His eyes burned with a fierce intensity. You might think they are just numbers, but they are human beings. Real lives. And destroying them would mean tearing apart the very fabric of this nation. Every eye in the room was fixed on him. Tension mounted like a storm ready to break. Some deputies looked away, others clung to his every word. As he finished, he looked straight into the camera, into the eyes of a nation teetering on the edge. When I was a boy, he began softly, I thought the halls of Rodin were for remembering the great leaders. But I realize now, it's about the people. It's about actions, choices. Are we going to continue building walls, or will we start rebuilding lives? The hall was silent, then erupted in cautious applause, as if unsure whether the storm had truly passed. But the storm inside remained, roaring under the surface. Because this was only the beginning. The real question was, will the country listen? Or will the silence become deafening, signaling the final descent into chaos? 5 minutes ago, the streets of the government chamber echoed with a shocking revelation. An explosive scandal erupted, shaking the political scene to its core. On November 19, a surprising turn of events took place, unveiling the return of key figures Vasily Ulyi and Vinodnik Hausa. Andrei Rimovich, Belousov, names once lost to history, came back into the spotlight after nearly a year of silence. The air was thick with tension as the war in Cluj abruptly ended, and truths long buried surfaced. As Belousov stepped into the hall, his presence was chilling. His face was expressionless, yet every muscle tensed with unspoken fury. He entered like a shadow, carrying with him a folder as thin as despair. No fanfare, no noise, just silent warning. It was reminiscent of a battlefield's quiet before a storm, a modern art museum's eerie stillness before chaos. The officers around him sensed something was coming, but dared not speak. Belousov, once a formidable figure, now looked worn. His eyes darkened, shadows flickering in their depths. His clothes, as black as a crisis archive, clung to his body. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the folder. Whatever was inside, it wasn't just paper, it was a weapon of truth. He moved slowly, methodically, towards the center. Every step resonated like the strike of a piano's key, final, decisive. At the dais, a wave of whispers rose from the young deputies. They argued softly, sharing fragments of discourse, a digital pension, control over the future, yet Belousov's focus was unbreakable. He approached the leader, Vyacheslav Volodymyr, who sat as firm as a monument. Volodymyr's voice, sharp but confident, declared plans to purge illegal immigration, calling it a safeguard for the nation's soul. He spoke of culture, tradition, and identity, words that sounded righteous but hid darker motives. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, silent, untouchable. No hand raised, no words spoken. The stranger's gaze was piercing, melting away the facade of politics. The silence grew dense, electric, a static charge that made the hairs stand on end. It was as if the entire chamber held its breath, awaiting the inevitable storm. The newcomer's voice broke the calm, a whisper that cut through the tension like a surgical scalpel. "You have long ignored those from the construction sites of Moscow to the fields near Mariupol," he said softly yet fiercely. His words painted vivid images: workers building schools, families arriving in drab, makeshift housing, their hopes tangled in the dust of progress. His tone was calm but insistent, challenging the hurried solutions that masked deeper fears. His words questioned, who truly pulls the strings behind this chaos? The audience was stunned. The air was thick with silent accusation. Do they understand the real cost of their policies? Behind their calculated faces, the seed of conflict had already been sown. As the stranger's gaze swept the room's lights flickered, shadows dancing like ghosts of past regrets. He pulled out a folder, documents filled with stories of the forgotten. A hospital built in Mariupol, a Tajik worker, Ahmad, whose daughter was born amidst turmoil, a symbol of resilience amid chaos. These stories weren't headlines, they were the real fabric of the nation. Yet, the words on paper betrayed the nation's true face, divided, vulnerable, on the verge of fracture. He challenged the assembly: do you believe this is merely about figures and policies? Or is it about the identity of a people? A boy from the blocks, a girl from a humble neighborhood, these are the true heartbeat of the nation. Not the borders, not the fences, but the everyday moments of unity and belonging. The difference? An unspoken connection, the silent language of a people who share scars and hopes. The room grew colder. Deputies shifted uncomfortably, feeling the weight of the truth. The silent question hovered: are we losing ourselves in our own rules? Or are we awakening to the real threat, the loss of our collective soul? The old machinery seemed to tremble beneath this realization, as if facing its own obsolescence. The stranger's voice softened, yet its message echoed with clarity: most fear losing control, but true strength lies in unity. It's not about walls or fences, but about shared bonds that no policy can break. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Every mind replayed his message, every heart questioned its direction. Russia was built on community, not exclusion. But do the rulers still remember that? Or have they fallen into the trap of fear and power? As the chamber sank into stunned silence, a voice from the vacuum, born from decades of hardship, began to speak. It was Ruslan, a man who had fought through decades of neglect and prejudice. He had no citizenship, no privilege. Yet he was the face of resilience. A street vendor in the subway, a builder of schools, these were the true architects of the nation. His simple voice carried the weight of countless stories, stories of sacrifice, loyalty, and hope. This was the moment of reckoning. A question to all present: what legacy will we leave? Will we forge a future based on exclusion, or will we reclaim our identity through unity? The answer lies beyond the courtroom's walls, in the everyday lives of those who built this land. The chamber remained silent, but every eye was lit with an unspoken determination. A storm had broken, not just in words but in the very soul of the nation. The choice was clear: continue the path of division and fear, or embrace the unity that binds us all. And as the last echoes faded, history whispered: true strength isn't in the fences we build, but in the bonds we cherish. Earlier, I described a silent scene, an atmosphere thick with tension, like an electric charge in the air. Now, brace yourself for what happened next. A wave of silence swept over the hall, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable storm to hit. Suddenly, a faint rustling broke the quiet. It was subtle at first, like the whisper of a shadow moving. Then, out of nowhere, a figure stepped forward. Not with loud commands or aggressive gestures, but with quiet resolve. The air around him seemed to crackle with anticipation. His face was cold, unreadable, a mask of determination. His hands, trembling slightly, clenched a folder so thin it seemed unable to contain the storm of truths inside. Each step he took felt like a hammer pounding the floor. The desperation in his eyes was unmistakable. Every eye in the room fixated on him. He approached the central microphone, every footfall echoing through the hushed chamber. No grand speeches, no dramatic entrances, just a calm, piercing gaze that cut through the silence like a blade. The room felt heavier, the air more oppressive, as if the very walls were holding their breath. He paused briefly, then softly spoke. His voice was gentle yet carrying the weight of the entire nation's pain. Words of honesty, of unspoken truths that many avoided. And what he revealed shocked everyone present, the corrupt fabric of their own society, the ignored suffering of countless families torn apart by neglect and indifference. His words painted a vivid picture, the smell of oppression. The roughness of injustice blasted through the silence like a lightning strike. The hall trembled with the impact, parts of it feeling like a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Some deputies looked away, others clenched their fists, and a few began to realize that the truth was unavoidable. And then, the unexpected happened. Just as his voice reached a crescendo, a loud bang echoed from the back of the room, a door swinging open wildly. All eyes turned. Standing in the doorway was a man, cloaked in shadows, eyes glowing with a fiery certainty. A stranger who seemed to embody the chaos that was finally breaking free. He strode forward with purpose, defying the silence, challenging the power structures that tried to silence his voice. It was as if the entire hall had become a battleground, between loyalty and rebellion, between silence and truth. The room was trembling now, on the verge of chaos. What secrets were about to be exposed? Who was this mysterious figure, daring to challenge everything? And what will happen when the storm fully erupts? Stay with us, because this story is far from over. This voice is not just the voice of the minister, it is the voice of a generation. It echoes through the halls not with bureaucratic speeches or empty promises but with raw truth. The moment is heavy with recognition. It's not the law that matters now, but the honesty of someone willing to speak it. The atmosphere thickens, even the steel-willed are caught off guard. They wait for the ritual, but it transforms into something real. Suddenly, a figure approaches the podium not as a politician, but as a witness to history. His steps are slow, deliberate. The air around him feels charged, trembling with anticipation. In his hand, he holds a simple folder, not a document, but a relic of a more honest time. As he places it on the table, the scent of old paper drifts into the room, mingling with the tense silence. It's as if he's pulling from the past a fragment of truth. He begins to speak softly, yet every word strikes like a lightning bolt. His voice carries the weight of memories, childhood in a war-torn country, the smell of bread in a broken homeland. His words paint vivid images, children of different nations playing, friends from Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Russia. Despite language barriers, they understood each other without translation. They laughed, worked together, and survived together. His face is calm but holds 1,000 stories. He recounts his father's struggles, born in 1943, displaced during evacuation, forging ahead amid hardship. His family's hardships were not isolated, they were universal. The story of people who, despite differences, united against adversity. His words reveal a truth often ignored, that unity was forged not by flags, but by shared toil and common suffering. He unlocks a folder, the same one his father signed decades ago. Inside, faded handwritten letters tell stories of resilience, sacrifice, and hope. He mentions a man from the former Soviet Union, a worker who built bridges in the rubble, who never cared for borders or labels, only for the future they could craft together. The memory drips with nostalgia but is tinged with urgency. He pauses, voice trembling slightly, then questions aloud, who among us today can write such a letter? Who can speak of sacrifice without fear? Who dares to remember that unity is the real strength? The room is silent except for the hum of tension. Everyone feels it, the unspoken acknowledgement that the real battle isn't just political, it's human. And suddenly, the room feels different. The walls seem to breathe history. The past isn't just a memory but a mirror for today. The true fight is not over laws or borders, it's about preserving the soul of a nation. The question remains, will we have the courage to speak the truth like the man before us, or will we continue hiding behind empty words? The answer hangs in the air, heavy with possibilities. In the heated exchange moments ago, Belousov unveiled a touching letter from a migrant worker, recounting songs in Armenian met with Russian replies, exhaustion shared in the grind of building together, eyes lifting in quiet plea. Who among these deputies could pen such words of raw connection today, forged in sweat and unspoken trust? But what if forgetting our shared roots dooms us all? Imagine a brother staring down a fractured family, hearts pounding in the dim hall air thick with unspoken regrets. Andrei Rimovich Belousov scanned the room, not with a judge's glare, but like kin mourning a schoolyard bond we can't reclaim. We chase illusions of progress, convinced the old Soviet ways are dust. Yet, isn't this the real peril? The soul of a nation, the rhythm of standing side by side, the instinct to lend a hand. Picture it, a Tajik no longer eyed as foe by his neighbor, an Armenian woven into a comrade's daily laugh, a Ukrainian clasped as blood brother, not outsider. The chamber froze, breaths held tight, like a spell binding even the skeptics. Rhetoric burned in his tone, rising just enough to pierce the hush. Have you wandered those dusty school museums, where faded blackboards from 1977 whisper secrets? Names etched there, patrons like Kagan. Timoshenko, one classroom, one vast land, one unbreakable recall. You ache to erase it all, label it folly? He edged toward Volodin, no venom in his approach, merely near enough to stir the soul. Tell me straight, do you deem the Soviet era a blunder? That we shattered it with our own fury. After enduring winters that clawed at our bones, wars where we shielded one another from the storm? Volodin's quiet stretched, heavy as defeat, the kind that knows words won't mend what's cracked. Why then, cast out those who etched themselves into our tale? Belousov pivoted back to the podium, his mind flashing to village silences, alive with the hum of Buran assembly lines. I witnessed it firsthand. Moldovans and Belarusians hoisting massive platforms, the clang of metal on metal echoing through frosty nights, scents of oil and resolve mingling. This wasn't scripted harmony, it was raw truth. A common purpose, a shared horizon, one loaf split among 5 hungry souls. Silence gripped him then, before a snapshot emerged in his grasp. There, my grandfather amid Greek laborers, beside him, a man whose name I unearthed only lately. An Armenian from the remote hamlet, they raised that towering cascade together. Grandfather's note lingered, without him, we'd have faltered. And now? That stranger, he's woven into our lineage, his legacy pulsing in our veins. The hall stirred faintly, murmurs like distant thunder, as Belousov's gaze locked on Volodin once more. But what hidden fracture from those united days threatens to unravel everything now? A picture was slowly turned in front of the audience. It showed a man, now one of us, part of this complex tapestry. His voice, once gentle, became firm, soaked in emotion. You fear migrants, he said softly. I fear the desert. You dread mixing, he continued. I fear happiness. Because if we forget how to stand together, we'll stay here forever, stuck. He paused, eyes meeting those of every listener. If anyone falls behind the wall, no one will give water, no one will ask. Are you cold? His gaze sharpened. No. You're not. His words cut through the silence. Suddenly, he looked directly into the camera. People from Yerevan, Bishkek, Kishin, Khiva, Baku, if you're listening, you are still alive because you stood with us during the hardest times. When everything was falling. Without you, our country would not be here today. An emotional pause followed. This isn't politics. It's gratitude. A simple human thank you to those without whom we would not survive. In the hall, silence stretched, but the weight was heavy, no longer strange. It was real. He leaned in slightly, voice a whisper. We built this together, nothing else. Otherwise, there's no future. His words echoed. Look around. Our cities, Magnitogorsk, Angarsk, Komsomolsk, Amur, Taliat, aren't just names. They are stories, bloodlines. Not just fog, but floods of history, floods of life. He stopped, hesitation flickering across his face. Then, he vanished into the background, as if swallowed by the enormity of his words. His memories played like old films, stories of metallurgy in the Caucasus. Built solely by Russian hands but shared with Uzbeks, Armenians, Jews, Bashkirs. Cities hammered into the ground Russian, Uzbek, Georgian, stamped by labor, sacrifice, and unity. The map before him was burned in the depths of history, red lines crossing borders like the wind sweeping through a barren land. Yet, the past was alive. Buried in what was once Nazi-occupied, in every brick laid, every steel beam forged. He looked over the crowd, eyes burning with pride and pain. Our country is built on these foundations, he said quietly. Not just the steel and concrete, but the blood, the tears, the sacrifices. Nothing else. Suddenly, the weight of history pressed down, mountains of memory, echoes of industry, decades of toil etched into the landscape. His voice grew almost of a whisper, yet carried the force of centuries. He took a step forward, voice trembling with resolve. We must remember, these roots run deep. We are united by what we built. They tried to divide us, but we remember. And we stand strong. Every word seemed to settle like dust in the air, heavy with meaning. The hall was tense, every breath drawn cautiously. His gaze pierced through the crowd, unyielding. The silence was thick, neither loud nor empty. It was charged, electric, waiting for what was to come next. Like a storm looming overhead, silent but deadly. Then, he spoke once more, voice a low whisper. Don't forget. We are far stronger when we are together, built on unity, sacrifice, and endless resilience. And with that, he stepped back. Leaving behind a room filled with unspoken promises, reminding everyone that the future depends on what we remember today. A shocking betrayal rocks the hall of the nation's legislature, something so clear yet so sinister. Just 5 minutes ago, a political storm erupted that no one saw coming. Inside this chamber, intense whispers turned into deafening silence as a startling truth was unveiled. Behind closed doors, a secret was exposed, an alliance that threatens the very fabric of our society. Imagine the scene: a figure, cold and unyielding, walks into the room, his face a mask of resolve, yet his eyes betray the weight of what he carries. Without fanfare or noise, he approaches, carrying a thin folder, yet inside, the weight of a nation's future. His steps are deliberate, each one echoing like a drumbeat of impending change. The tension thickens as he stands before the assembly, eyes piercing, voice calm but loaded with unspoken fury. The room is filled with murmurs and shifting gazes. Suddenly, his voice cuts through the silence, soft but resolute, detailing issues that tremble within the core of the country. He speaks of migration, of borders, of integration. The words feel like a gust of wind, stirring the dormant fears of the assembly. Near him, young deputies whisper anxiously, sensing the storm about to break. Their nervous glances are shadowed by the palpable dread of what's to come. He unfurls a map, an alarming snapshot of the nation's shifting landscape. Lines drawn in blood-red ink trace divisions and alliances, marking territories not just on paper, but in lives. He questions, sharply, what will we build tomorrow? Will it be another fortress of isolation or a bridge to unity? The faces around him darken with each word. The air thickens with the scent of tension and unspoken accusations. Then, a figure appears, silent, commanding, almost materializing from the shadows. No words are spoken. No gestures made. He just observes, the silent judge of everything laid bare. The veteran politician's face stiffens as he feels the weight of history pressing down. His voice, when it finally speaks, is like a sledgehammer, deliberate, uncompromising. He recalls the scars of the past, decades of destruction, of false promises, and broken dreams. He points to a photograph, a simple image that tells 1,000 stories. Sardar, a man from a distant village, who worked as a prisoner, now a homeowner with a family. His wife, his children, an image of hope amidst chaos. And yet, the threat looms: if society discards such individuals, it risks losing more than just culture, it risks dismantling its soul. Every person, every neighbor, every child, each is a thread in the tapestry of a nation. He pauses, voice thick with emotion. He reminds everyone, culture isn't just a gift of genius, it's a choice. It needs nurture, understanding, forgiveness. And if ignored, it will fade away, replaced by indifference. The room is silent now, the weight of history heavy on every shoulder. The story of the past, the present, and the uncertain future converge in this moment, each decision carving the destiny of a nation. As he steps back, the assembly is left to grapple with the realities laid before them. Are they ready to face the truth? Will they choose unity or continue down the path of division? The answer lies in each of their hands, hidden in the silent choice that will define the future. Will they stand for progress, justice, and inclusion?
Or let fear and greed shape the landscape of tomorrow? The clock is ticking. The storm is coming.
And the fate of the nation hangs in balance. In the last episode, Belousov confronted the speaker with raw truth, exposing deep divisions in the Duma. He shared a personal reflection from his youth, thanking a young worker and drawing parallels to post-war unity where origins didn't matter, only honest labor and mutual aid. Sitting bathed in the glow of symbolic maps, he settled among weathered faces of survivors, their discarded bombs echoing a fractured past, as he urged emotional openness without hollow speeches.
Have you ever wondered if a nation's very soul hinges on strangers wielding hammers in the dead of night?
Picture this, calloused hands gripping tools that raise hospitals amidst gunfire, breaths heavy with sweat and distant spices, skin rough from frost and foreign sun. Andrei Rimovich approached the podium's edge, his voice a low rumble cutting through stale air thick with whispered judgments. Russia's map unfurled like a battlefield, veins pulsing not as a monolithic whole, but a tapestry of countless interwoven destinies. Lights flickering in diverse tongues, resonating in hearts bound by shared struggle. Without that diversity, the land shrivels, withers, retreats into isolation, a barren homeland devoid of vibrant pulses. You push for fewer souls populating our streets, whispering the horrors of overcrowded nights.
But I crave vast crowds swelling our ranks. In that deep, gravelly tone, weighted by decades of unyielding experience, fear barrels in. Your dread? The joy of boundlessness. Mine? Numbing apathy's cold embrace.
Cameras zoomed in, capturing his hardened features, a weathered sculpture of resistance. Lines etched deep around unyielding eyes that pierce lies like arrows. Listen close, he urged, voice steady.
We've began unraveling our fabric. Clutch resentment too tight, and our nation dissolves into rage. Clutch trust, and it endures forever.
A beat of silence hung heavy, then he leaned forward, words soft as a plea. State faith thrives in peace, but hardship strips it bare, hurling us back to exclusion's abyss. He descended the steps, leaving the chamber submerged in eerie quiet, yet outside, in the digital sprawl, voices erupted like thunder. Shouts pierced the void, truth spoken.
Messages flooded, one migrant confessed, I'm destitute, scraping by, kids born on this soil, Russia's mine.
As Russian as they come, I toil side by side with Kyrgyz laborers, never driving them away.
Gratitude for standing firm. Another echoed, he's right.
My Armenian dad perished defending Stalingrad for our collective tomorrow. Belousov didn't gaze back at the deputies, his stare piercing the screen to unseen millions hungry for resolve.
What response could bridge the chasm? He declared it aloud, together we've constructed this reality. Fragmented with borders, divisions, prejudices, expulsions, and rebirth eludes us.
Lifting his chin defiantly, he intoned, the core dilemma isn't ethnicity defining belonging, it's humanity's pulse sustaining us. Strip away the human element, and symbols crumble, no flag waves eternal, no anthem stirs, no river flows with purpose. Quietly, he retreated sans fanfare, triumph, or obligatory claps armed only with incontrovertible clarity that imprinted itself indelibly.
As he stood once more, the strain etched deep, exhaustion from relentless battles, not cowardice, but, wait, could this mark the end of illusions, or the spark of a greater reckoning? A wave of tension dominated the hall.
5 minutes ago, chaos erupted amidst the political corridors, shocking everyone. A political scandal burst into flames, revealing inconvenient truths. Today, the spotlight is on Vasily Ulyi and a handful of powerful figures like Vinovnik Hausa, Andrei Rimovich, Belousov, and the Cardinal of Russia. Years of silence shattered as they re-emerged into the spotlight, bringing with them a storm that could change everything. Imagine the air thick with anticipation. As the meeting resumed, one man entered like a shadow, calm, deliberate, almost like a specter. No fanfare, no noise, just a quiet presence. His face was ashen, eyes dark with exhaustion, yet beneath that surface, a fierce resolve burned. He carried only a thin folder, an unassuming vessel hiding truths no one dared to confront. His steps echoed softly, each one a toll of impending upheaval. In this charged atmosphere, the defense minister appeared, his expressionly serious, like steel forged under pressure. His face was blank, but his eyes betrayed a storm of tension ready to burst. The room seemed to tighten around him, the air now tinged with a faint metallic scent, like blood. As he moved, the whispers grew louder. His presence was a warning, a storm was coming. Suddenly, a figure from the shadows emerged, silent as a ghost, yet commanding. He didn't speak initially, just looked. His gaze cut through the room like a scalpel, sharp and precise. He was the embodiment of quiet rage. The silence stretched, thick as fog, until he finally broke it with a voice so calm, so measured. It was almost a whisper in the storm. Have you seen what's happening on the construction sites in Moscow? Or are you already bringing home trophies from Finland? His words hit with icy clarity. The room froze. Every ear strained to catch his message. He continued, voice unwavering, you propose to send millions of people away just to keep the streets clean? To keep the river flowing without a single drop spilling over? He paused, the silence deafening. Everyone could feel the weight of his accusation hanging in the air. This wasn't just talk, it was revelation. The truth about the migrant workforce, the silent sacrifices, the unspoken costs. He laid the facts bare. In construction, migrants constitute over 10% of workers. In Moscow, that number jumps to 40%. Siberia and other regions aren't immune. The entire system is teetering on this fragile thread. He leaned closer, voice dropping lower, yet still powerful. You want to deport all migrants by 2030? Really? Just like that? The room was silent, shock written on every face. The figures he presented were staggering. These people are the backbone of vital industries. They fill gaps no one else dares to touch, dirty, dangerous, thankless jobs that locals avoid. He revealed a list, a roster of countries and regions. The reality was stark: Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, people living under constant threat of expulsion, torn from their families, their lives uprooted overnight. Their children's faces haunted his words. And yet, the authorities turn a blind eye, ignoring the human cost. Who will build in Ulyanovsk? Who will clear the snow? Who will keep the factories running? His voice grew angry. Lists of regions and industries flashed on the screen, places where millions of workers are indispensable. Without these migrants, the economy risks collapse. The entire system strains under this weight. A heavy silence fell again. Eyes darted nervously, some deputies shifted in their seats. One man in the back appeared intrigued, sensing that this storm was only gaining strength. The room's tension was palpable, like a wire stretched to its limit, ready to snap. He stepped back, voice rising slightly. You think these people will thank you for tearing them from their homes? Do you believe they will be grateful? Or will they simply slip into the shadows, creating ghettos where no one can see them? His words cut deep. The room grasped the bitter truth, a future shadowed by exclusion and unrest. Then he shared a story, a friend, a fellow migrant, who had once built a home in Derbent with his own hands. Without citizenship, support, or recognition, this man was murdered in the subway simply because he looked like he didn't want to work. Yet, years later, he built a school for his community, a symbol of hope and belonging. Can you see what's at stake? He asked quietly. This isn't just about jobs or numbers. It's about the soul of our country. Do you understand that? His words lingered, heavy as lead. The room was left trembling, on the brink of chaos. This is the moment where truth clashes with politics, the lines drawn unmistakably. Behind every silent gaze, a question burned: will we listen? Or will we only watch as the system crumbles under its own weight? The storm is coming closer, will you be prepared? Just a few moments ago, a seismic shift happened inside the Russian Duma. A political storm erupted that could shake the foundation of the nation. Politicians stood rigid, faces pale with tension, as shocking truths were unveiled, revealing a chaos that many had long tried to ignore. The room was heavy with anticipation. What secrets lay beneath the surface? Imagine the tension in the air, silent, charged, almost unbearable. A figure, cloaked in a dark jacket, approached the podium like a ghost from history. Without pomp or fanfare, he stepped forward, his footsteps echoing across the chamber. His calmness contrasted sharply with the storm brewing inside. This was no ordinary speech, it was a reckoning. The Minister of Defense, once a figure of authority, now stood before them, his face expressionless, yet eyes burning with a fire of defiance. His presence was as stark as a steel blade. His voice, cold and unwavering, cut through the silence. Words delivered with the precision of a surgeon, each phrase digging deeper into the fragile illusions of governance. He held a simple folder, its contents unknown, but the weight of its significance was clear. Suddenly, whispers turned into murmurs, debates among deputies about the future of pensions, national security, the cost of migration. The air grew thick with unease. The minister raised his hand, signaling a pause. The chamber held its breath. Then, he dropped a bombshell: if you refuse to face reality, we will drown in debt.
The truth is, our finances are crumbling. He unveiled staggering figures, losses reaching 3.5 trillion rubles in just 1 year. A sum greater than what the entire defense budget was a decade ago. The crowd gasped. Was this a warning or a confession? The room was spinning with questions: who would bear the burden? Who would carry the weight of this chaos? The moment hung heavy, like thunder after lightning. He called out the silence: no more hiding behind mock reforms. Standing, he challenged the powers that be: are you prepared to admit these losses? To confront the reality that prices are rising, logistics are failing, products are deteriorating? His voice grew louder, piercing through the political facade. The truth was unbearable, yet inevitable. Then, an even darker picture emerged: Russia's population is shrinking faster than it can be replenished. Statistics confirmed that annually, the country loses up to 700,000 people, an entire region disappearing every year. What happens when the workforce is gone? Who will pay the pensions? Who will sustain the economy? These questions hung like shadows over the chamber. The audience was silent, stunned by this reality check. Some deputies sat back, resigned; others looked away, overwhelmed by the magnitude. The speaker, trying to regain control, asked, can we even survive such losses? But the answer was in the very air itself: the country was at a crossroads. In this crisis, migrants are portrayed as both a burden and a necessity. Discussions revolved around their impact: living here, working, paying taxes, buying goods. Yet, the figures told a different story. Last year alone, migrants sent home over $23 billion. Their spending in Russia, however, was 5 times greater, buying food, clothing, jewelry, fueling the economy from within. A provocative question then emerged: if we deport all migrants, who will keep the industries running? Who will maintain the infrastructure? The chamber was flooded with uneasy silence. The stakes were painfully clear: our future depends on tough truths we refuse to confront. As the debate intensified, one voice broke through the chaos: a story of a man, a true patriot. A person who arrived in Russia without support, who built a school with his own hands, because he believed in the country. His sacrifice contrasted sharply with the selfishness of political games. The question lingered: are we capable of kindness amid the chaos? The room dimmed as the reality sank in: ignoring these problems only deepens the crisis. Ignorance is not an option anymore. This is a wake-up call: change or collapse. The stakes are higher than politics, higher than elections. The very fabric of the nation hangs in balance. And so, the story leaves us with one chilling thought: what will happen if we continue to ignore the warning signs? Are we ready to face the truth? Or will we drown in the sea of our own denial? The future is unwritten, but one thing is clear: what we choose today will echo through generations. In yesterday's intense moment, Finance Minister Andrei Rymovich-Belousov slammed harsh statistics on deporting migrants, revealing they spend 5 times more in Russia than they cost us, pouring billions into our treasury through taxes, everyday purchases, and the warmth of their hard-earned contributions. Now, imagine this shocking reality: if we expel every migrant tomorrow, who will foot the bill for our crumbling economy, leaving billions drained and our nation's soul barren? The room trembled as he unveiled how these workers weave the very fabric of our system's insurance, every single ruble they earn echoing through our gross domestic product, passing citizens unaware who actually built this prosperity. His chuckle cut like a knife, sharp and cold. Suppose tomorrow we deport them, he said. They won't leave their money here, they'll vanish, and we'll face catastrophic shortages. The tension hung thick, like humid air before a storm, voices whispering in the shadows. Our economy isn't a playground game, it's the raw pulse of life itself. Pull out one cog from its gears, and the whole machine collapses. Migrants aren't mere extras, they're the cornerstone holding half our body weight. He stepped toward the podium, eyes burning with unyielding fire. You don't have to embrace immigration, he declared, voice steady as steel. But you must grasp its necessity, or we'll cripple ourselves forever.
His words pierced the illusion of cheap populism peddled in elections, that false promise of easy fixes masking a hollow reality. At the end, he displayed the final slide, a bold, stark warning: migrants threaten the economy, it read, and the absence of threats. He seized the tablet, glaring at the faces etched with fear. Don't sell elections on dread, he urged. Show real numbers. Create alternates. Prove your plans, and I'll back them first. But if you're all just failures, own it. Admit we're courting our own ruin under siege mentality. He dropped into his chair, the silence shattered by murmurs, like distant thunder rolling in. Hall was alive, not hushed. Some deputies fidgeted with notes, others gazed through windows at the ordinary world outside. That mundane scene, the grey worker trudging through the yard, oblivious to elite decrees dictating fate, drew Belousov's gaze. He rose slowly, returning to the tribune without a mirror's reflection, steely and unshaken, building truth like an architect lays blocks against crumbling winds of deceit. We've tackled economics, infrastructure, funds, he said. Now, let's address what's silent but vital, the human factor. His extended pause consumed the room, slicing through distractions as precisely as a surgeon's cut, leaving listeners breathless. What unseen currents now swirl beneath this deputation? And how will ordinary lives pay the price if we ignore the unseen weaves? He leaned forward, the air thick with anticipation, every ear straining for what comes next, as fates hang by threads yet to unravel. In this moment, paused like the breath before a plunge, what deeper truth about our people will shatter the polish, exposing raw division simmering beneath? The minister's words danced on the edge. Sensory echoes of sweat-dampened suits, the faint scent of aged wood, and whispers of doubt creeping like shadows under crisp lights. Their presence shapes our insurance networks, every ruble pulsing through lives, boosting our gross domestic product in ways commuters scarcely fathom. That laugh erupted, bitter and biting. If we deport tomorrow, he challenged, they'll take their fortunes elsewhere, we'll hemorrhage billions, stranded in voids. Pauses stretched, heavy as fog over frozen earth. Economics isn't sport, it's life's intricate web. Remove a single thread, and all unravels. Migrants? They're the core, bearing workloads that sustain us all. Striding to the edge, he pressed on. Love them or not, you must see deportation's doom, starving us of the cheap labor fueling homes, fields, and illusions of normalcy hawked at polls. His final slide loomed, declaring duality: migrants pose economic peril and safeguard against greater harms. Tablet gripped, he pierced doubters. Choose courage over scare tactics, calculate, innovate, present paths, and earn my allegiance. Else, confess our self-sabotage. Seated anew, unrest boiled over, figures rustling like wine through dry leaves, glances darting to windows framing routine drudgery, that tireless yard laborer plodding on, unaware of high-stakes gambles with his kin's destinies. Belousov reclaimed the platform, unmirrored resolve building truths akin to an engineer's foundation defying populist gales. We've dissected budgets, setups, cash flows, he noted. Time to embrace what's unspoken yet paramount, humanity itself. His deliberate hush enveloped them, as surgical as an operating theater, breaths held in suspense. Now, as this charged quiet deepens, will it birth revelation or reckoning, with hearts exposed to the tactile grind of unspoken struggles and the sharp tang of corrupted air? Listeners braced, pulses quickening, as hidden shadows beckon revelations untold. In today's Russia, a terrible crisis is unfolding not just in factories and industries, but deep within our social fabric. The silence grows louder where voices should be heard, where struggles go unnoticed, and where real issues are masked behind blank stares. Tens of thousands of positions are now occupied by migrants, not because they choose to come, but because no one else is left to fill the gaps. Imagine a young woman, a surgeon from St. Petersburg, working under conditions so harsh she can taste the dust in her throat. She refuses to leave, despite the meager salary of 30,000 rubles and the field-like conditions she's forced to endure. Her hands are steady, but inside, a storm rages. How long can she withstand this? In regions like Volgograd, 70% of drivers are migrants from Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, simply trying to survive. The heartache is real. Schools in distant regions suffer from a drastic shortage of teachers. In the Archangel School, a young man from Bishkek holds a Russian diploma, yet he teaches math so brilliantly that his students consistently win at Olympiads. But he lives in a dormitory, dreaming of better days that never come. The picture of our nation's future is bleak: classrooms filled with temporary workers, hospitals relying on migrants for essential care, and infrastructure crumbling under the weight of neglect. And yet, no one dares to confront the true depth of this crisis. Everyone looks away, pretending not to see the empty seats, the dying services, the shattered dreams. It's as if our society is drifting on a sinking ship, with only a faint glimmer of hope flickering in the distance. This silent chaos is quietly tearing us apart. What will it take for us to wake up? The picture is clear: without migrants, the country cannot function. Without their work, hospitals collapse, schools close, and entire industries grind to a halt. It's a reality we refuse to face. The question remains: how much longer can we continue ignoring the bleeding wounds beneath our feet? The answer might shock you, because in this silent crisis, we are all passengers on a sinking ship. Do you realize what your future might look like? Or are we destined to watch our homeland become just a shadow of what it once was? A recent explosive event in the country's parliament has shaken the entire nation. Just 5 minutes ago, a major political scandal unfolded. On November 19, a legislative session took an unexpected turn as certain figures managed to bring influential individuals back into the fold: Vasily Ulyi, the Nabokov Hausa, Andrei Rimovich, Belousov, and Sarai. Almost a year after a tense incident that nearly tore the political establishment apart, these figures reappeared, signaling a shift in the ongoing conflict. The war that had raged in the regional conflict zone of Kloch finally came to an end. As Belousov's words echoed through the hall, his tone cut sharply, sparking outrage among officials. His speech, layered with accusations and harsh truths, ignited a storm of anger. Despite the warm contrasting backdrop of the Central Asian landscape, listeners couldn't ignore the burning intensity of his message. Stay tuned to discover how this confrontation could change everything and why many felt betrayed by those they once trusted. Walking into the chamber like a ghost on a mission, Belousov moved with deliberate silence: no fanfare, no alarm bells, just a quiet, electric tension. It was as if he belonged to a different realm entirely, stepping out from a relic of modern art into a battlefield of ideas. With a worn, dirt-stained jacket, he seemed more a soldier than a politician. His face was pale, his eyes deep-set with exhaustion, and his clothes darkened by the weight of years spent in crises. Clutching a thin folder, he approached without urgency, carrying a paper towel instead of a document. As if dismissing formalities to reveal raw truth. Meanwhile, young deputies whispered in hushed voices, their tension palpable. Some scrolled through their phones, others tapped their fingers nervously, awaiting what would come next. The hall's atmosphere was thick with anticipation: a storm about to break. In the background, Vyacheslav Volodin proclaimed national policies with unwavering confidence: ending illegal immigration, defending cultural identity, protecting the nation's core values. Yet, amidst his speech, a flicker of unease spread. Someone collapsed quietly, an unspoken reminder of the upheaval lurking beneath the surface. Suddenly, a shadowy man materialized in the room's shadowy depths, silent yet commanding. He didn't shout, didn't raise his voice, but his gaze cut through everyone, anchoring the room in an icy silence. Everyone instinctively understood, this was a moment of transformation. As the silence stretched, the room seemed to crackle with nervous electricity, as if an underground storm was about to explode. Volodin faltered, visibly shaken by this unexpected presence. Then, the stranger finally stepped forward, his voice low but sharp, like a surgeon's scalpel. "Your long-standing plan involves sending millions away," he said quietly, yet forcefully. "But have you truly considered who will build this country when your policies push people out? Who will mend the broken roads, repair the bridges, or install new pipelines?" His piercing gaze pierced through the speaker, leaving no doubt that the game was about to change. He described a scene almost too harsh to believe: temporary shelters built hastily for workers, Kyrgyz, Uzbeks, Tajiks, living in squalor, their labor exploited daily. He recounted seeing a taxi driver from Kyrgyzstan, an Uzbek construction worker, a Tajik who built a bridge in the mountains, and in the same breath, told of how authorities quickly shipped them out, their lives uprooted in just a few days. The air was thick with the scent of dust and the oppressive weight of unspoken truths. Each story was a blow to the complacency of officials. With a cold, deliberate tone, he laid out raw facts: migrants formed over 10% of construction labor in the biggest regions, up to 40% in Moscow, even 25% in Siberia. They were essential, yet ignored in political debates. If we send them away, who will build our future? Who will clear snow?
Who will keep the country afloat? His list of questions pierced through the room's defenses, forcing everyone to confront their own blindness and complicity. The tension increased, cameras flickered, ears strained, eyes darted nervously. The room's collective breath was held as the speaker turned slightly, revealing a folded letter from community leaders, an appeal for understanding, a plea for patience amid the chaos. Behind him, whispers of unrest grew louder. The speaker's words hit like thunder. Do you think these people will thank you? Or will they disappear into the shadows, forming ghettos where hope dies? His voice echoed the fears and frustrations held deep beneath the surface. He paused, gazing over the assembled officials, then continued with quiet resolve. I knew a man, Ruslan, who grew up in Azerbaijan, worked tirelessly, and built a school with his own hands, because he believed in this country. Today, many see him as an outsider. He's gone, simply because he was deemed inconvenient. But his story is just one of countless silent sacrifices. The hall's silence thickened, every ear capturing his words like a sharp knife. His narrative grew visceral, a story of a Tajik worker who laid bricks in Moscow, a Kyrgyz who rescued a child from a collapsing building, an Uzbek who kept a small farm afloat despite hardships. These stories, he argued, are the real heartbeat of the nation, silent yet vital, invisible to those in power. They breathe life into a country built on their back. But today, their sacrifices are dismissed, swept aside by policies driven by fear and short-sightedness. As he concluded, the room was enveloped in a heavy silence, only the faint echo of footsteps and the quiet hum of tension lingered. The question hung in the air: who will stand for these unseen lives? Who will remember their sacrifices when the lights go out? Behind every official's calculated nod, an unspoken fear grew. What happens when this silent majority is pushed too far? In that quiet, uncertain moment, a truth emerged: the real strength lies not in policies or numbers, but in the lives quietly built every day, lives that form the backbone of this nation, resilient and enduring, even when ignored or forgotten. 5 minutes ago, chaos erupted inside the Russian parliament. The room, usually filled with whispers and political maneuvering, suddenly turned into a battlefield of words and unspoken truths. Tension gripped the air as a fierce debate burst forth, something so shocking it stunned even the hardened deputies. A scandal had just ignited, promising to shake the very foundation of the nation. Picture this: a figure walks in, calm yet cold, carrying only a thin folder. No fanfare, no noise, just silent authority. The halls, once bustling with routine, now feel charged with anticipation. As he approaches the center of attention, the atmosphere thickens, everyone senses something big is about to unfold. Words are about to explode. Secrets are about to surface. He is the Minister of Defense, but today, he looks like a figure haunted by the weight of many burdens. His face is pale, eyes shadowed from sleepless nights. Beneath his suit, hands clenched tightly around the folder, trembling slightly, each step deliberate. The room, tense with the smell of old paper and nervous sweat, seems to hold its breath. His presence is like a heavy stone pressing into the floor, commanding silence. Suddenly, in a whisper that resonates like a warning, he begins to speak. His voice is steady, yet beneath it lies a storm of emotions. He discusses the critical issues weighing on the country's future: migration, security, unity. Each word feels orchestrated, deliberate. The room listens, spellbound, as he reveals startling facts: the real scale of illegal immigration, the risks lurking within every unchecked corridor, every shadowed alley. The numbers are shocking: over 10% of the construction workforce in major cities is migrant. In Moscow, that figure rises to 40%. Siberia isn't spared: 25% of their logistics depend on migrant labor. The truth is hard to swallow. Who will lead the country if these issues grow beyond control? Who will maintain order when the snow melts away and chaos creeps in? His words are like icy darts, piercing the illusions of comfort. He pauses, a silent warning. You can feel the unspoken question hanging in the air: do you comprehend the real danger? Do you understand what's at stake? Behind his calm exterior, a fire burns, refusing to be extinguished. He points to the hidden costs of neglect, callous disregard that will turn entire neighborhoods into ghettos. The room turns silent, the weight of his message sinking in. Someone in the back starts to shift, eyes darting, fear mixing with curiosity. They realize, this isn't just about politics. It's about the soul of the nation. This is a fight for identity, for future generations who will inherit the mess we leave today.
The stakes are impossible to ignore because behind these numbers are real people, real lives. He looks directly into the crowd with a piercing gaze.
His voice softens but commands unwavering attention.
He shares stories of a friend from Azerbaijan who struggled without citizenship, yet built a school with his own hands in Derbent. A man who risked everything, not for glory, but because he loved his land.
And now, society pushes away genuine effort, leaving these souls to fade into the shadows. His message is clear: the country's spirit is fragile. If we sell our values for superficial stability, we risk losing the heart of Russia itself. The chain of silence hangs heavy. The final white horse, tired after a long ride, stands at the edge of exhaustion. The question remains, will we wake up before it's too late? Or will we let the silence drown out the truth, turning our homeland into an unrecognizable shadow of its former self?
In this moment of stillness, only the echo of his words remains. A warning and a plea all wrapped in one: protect the soul of our nation, or see it crumble under the weight of neglect.
The storm is brewing. Will we stand, or fall silent forever?
A hush falls over the chamber, the air thick with anticipation. Just moments ago, a seismic upheaval rattled the halls of the parliament, an explosive confrontation that challenged everything we thought we knew about the soul of a nation.
Now, as silence settles, the question hangs: can a country survive without its spirit? Or are we heading toward chaos masked as stability?
Vasily Ulyi, Vinovnik Hausa, and several others had their fates decided today, returned, reintegrated, almost forgotten. Meanwhile, the war in Cloche had finally ceased, yet the scars remain. The words uttered by Belousov weren't just harsh, they ignited fury among the deputies. Listen closely to this story until the very end. It will ignite your outrage, stir your beliefs, and challenge your loyalties. Support Belousov's stance or stand by the others, your choice could define the future. He entered the hall like a man walking to his doom, quiet, deliberate, almost spectral. No fanfare, no noise. He seemed a relic of a bygone era, like a guard from a museum of modern history, clad in a worn jacket, carrying the weight of years. Andrei Rimovich, the Minister of Defense, looked every bit the part, stern, unyielding, a silent sentinel amidst the chaos. His face was pale, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, his clothes blacker than the memories of the financial crises echoing from distant archives. The air around him smelled of dust and dread, a scent of impending upheaval. He clutching a thin folder, just paper, no heavy documents, no promises, just the word Yakir. With measured steps, he approached the assembly.
Inside, a young group of deputies whispered heatedly about digital pensions, their voices muffled but intense.
If you don't want a digital pension, live your way, one said, voice trembling with defiance. The White House had noticed, yet inside, there was movement, a restless energy that refused to settle.
He moved slowly, each step heavier than the last, like an iron bolt plunging into the machinery of politics. Everyone who saw his back understood, today, no one would leave untouched.
Parliament's usual rhythm persisted, reading, fidgeting, passing notes, but the tension was palpable, an electric charge coursing through the chamber. Vyacheslav Volodyin, with a voice steady as a fortress, announced that by 2030, illegal immigration must be fully eradicated. It's our safety, our national heritage. His words were unwavering, demanding action. The room held its breath, some collapsed inward in despair, others scribbled notes in darkened corners.
Then, suddenly, a figure emerged, a silent presence between two directives, observing with piercing eyes.
Without raising a hand or asking permission, he simply stared.
Volodyin paused, sensing the storm approaching.
You've been working in Moscow's construction sites, he said softly, yet with a strategic edge.
Have you seen who really lays the bricks? Are they already coming from Finland? Or are they still arriving in boxes from abroad?
His tone was calm, but beneath it lurked a storm of accusations.
The room lingered in silence, none dared to laugh or dismiss.
Instead, he continued, voice lowering to a whisper. You propose sending millions away, just to keep life comfortable. But what about the streets?
The rivers?
His gaze swept across the crowd, surgical and cold. He held up a list of alarming statistics. More than 10% of workers in construction are migrants, reaching 40% in certain regions, even higher in Siberia.
In logistics, nearly 1/3. If we push them out, who will build our future? Who will clear the snow in Ulyanovsk? Who will operate the canals in Saratov?
His words sliced through the air, sharp as a blade, dripping with urgency.
The hall grew tense.
Deputies shifted uncomfortably. One, in the back row, appeared to understand, the realization dawning that today's decisions are about more than numbers, they're about our identity. He paused, voice thick with emotion, then told a story.
A story of a man named Ruslan.
An Azerbaijani who had worked alongside him, without citizenship, with nothing but a dream.
Ruslan was killed on the subway, murdered simply because he wanted to survive.
Years later, he built a school in Derbent, a monument to hope, to belonging.
Now, he asked, do we thank him for his sacrifices? Or accept that some are left behind?
The room fell silent, as if the walls themselves were listening. Russia's strength lies not in division, he continued, but in unity, silent, steady acceptance. He looked around at the deputies, those who still believed in a united country, flawed yet alive. We're not glorifying migration, he said softly.
Fact is, we can't turn back the clock.
There will be no monolithic, sterilized Russia, because a sterile nation is a dead nation. He stepped forward, voice resonant, like the rumble before a storm. The tension grew, an almost tangible crackle like static before lightning, until Belousov's voice shattered the silence. It was a challenge, a scream in the void. Do you really plan to deport all migrants by 2030? The list was laid bare: regions heavily dependent on migrant workers, economies at stake, futures hanging in the balance. He looked at the assembly as if weighing their resolve, then pointed directly at the documents and the faces in front of him.
Who will take the snow from our streets? Who will run the ports? Will it be your children? Your own kin? Or will they vanish into a ghetto, left unloved and forgotten, because of our actions? A piercing pause.
Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating.
Nearly everyone understood the implications. What's to come if this path is taken?
The room's atmosphere grew ominous, charged with unspoken fears. He leaned closer, voice dropping into a whisper, like a dagger pressed against the heart.
And do you think those you plan to expel will thank you? Or will they simply disappear into shadows, into the margins, without a voice? In the darkness, they'll multiply without registration, taxes, or hope. A ghetto in the making, not born of choice, but of our neglect. A brief silence.
Then he added, voice low but piercing, you're not fighting for control.
You're fighting for your future, in the rubble, in the abandoned yards, in the winter snow. Who will maintain order then? Who will lead when you're gone?
He paused and turned to his colleagues, men and women hardened by years of struggle.
I knew a man named Ruslan, an ordinary worker, a hero in his own way.
He built a future for his children, with no promise of support, only hope.
Now, isn't that the real strength of our country? Not in division, not in exclusion, but in those who stand, silent but resolute, against the tide?
The chamber held its breath.
The storm was unleashed, an unavoidable collision between visions. Behind every word, a question lingers: what kind of nation are we shaping? A fractured shadow, or a united force?
The answer depends on the choices made tonight, in this very hall.
Following the previous discussion, it's clear that our nation faces a defining moment. We're told to cling to stability, yet chaos quietly brews beneath the surface.
When you offer people radical change and illusions, they inevitably seek familiar roots, mainly because of their families, their homes, their hospitals.
It's not about ideology, it's about survival.
Those who forget who we truly are, those who neglect the heart of this country, they risk losing everything. Russia isn't just walls and buildings, it's the people who stand behind them, who hold this land together with their resilience. Without this truth, the nation doesn't fall from enemies outside, no, it destroys itself from within.
Fear, mountains of it, burrows into our minds and hearts.
But the truth always overpowers lies, because lies are just fleeting excuses designed to numb our consciousness. He paused for a moment. Silence spread like a heavy fog through the hall. The White Hall, once filled with murmurs and whispers, suddenly became a cathedral of quiet conviction. No one dared to stand or make a sound.
The leader looked upward, into the ceiling adorned with stories carved in wood, waiting.
Only after a long minute did he come down from his silent contemplation. He approached the microphone, calm and steady, like a man harboring a secret. His voice was soft but carried the weight of unshakable conviction. It struck me then, after years of studying economic graphs, of analyzing figures and forecasts, I realized the core of this country isn't just numbers or exports or gross domestic product. It's something deeper. It's in the eyes of a woman whose husband risks everything to defend this land. It's in the call of a migrant child, left behind, whose silent hopes we often forget. It's in the song of a village struck by fire, yet still standing, still fighting. This is our essence. Not in policies or plans, but in the spirit, in the unbreakable will of the people who live with it. To truly understand the soul of Russia, you must look beyond the surface. You must see the courage of those who never give up, who keep their faith amid chaos. Because, in the end, that faith will forge a future no lie can eclipse. 5 minutes ago, a sudden scandal erupted inside the halls of power. An explosive turn of events shocked everyone, revealing truths no one wanted to face. Imagine the tension, an entire nation holding its breath. What could cause such a thunderclap in a place where silence is gold? Stay with me, this story will leave you outraged and questioning everything you thought you knew. It all began with a heavy, oppressive silence. A man entered the chamber like a storm approaching, calm on the outside, but with eyes burning with fury. He carried nothing, no documents, no fanfare, just the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. The air grew thick. Every step he took resonated like a tolling bell. You could almost hear the echo of past mistakes reverberate through the cold marble floors. His face was dry, strained, lips pressed tightly together, tension etched into every line. It was as if he was fighting himself just to stand there. This was no routine speech, it was a battle between silence and the inevitable. In his hands, he held a slim folder, nothing more than a stack of papers. But those papers held the fate of millions. As he approached a place of discussion, a ripple of murmurs spread. Young deputies whispered anxiously, their voices trembling like leaves caught in a gust. One voice, soft, almost a whisper, began to rise. It was that of the country's most seasoned parliamentarian, Vyacheslav Volodin. Firm, unwavering, he voiced a plan to end illegal immigration once and for all. It's about safety. It's about our culture. It's about our national identity, he declared. Suddenly, a stranger appeared. No one noticed him entering. As if conjured from thin air, he stood silently before the speaker's table. His gaze was intense, piercing through the noise, through the crowd's fears. Without a word, he looked around, unwavering, calm. Every eye focused on him. The silence thickened until it was almost suffocating. The tension was tangible, like a live wire ready to snap. Volodin hesitated. His voice faltered for the first time in decades. The intruder spoke softly but with deadly precision. You've been neglecting the truth, he said. Have you seen who really builds our cities? Who works tirelessly on our roofs, plants our seeds, or cares for our children? His words cut through the room like a blade. They come from distant lands. They build up what you take for granted. But you ignore their sacrifices while planning how to send them away. The room was deafening. A sense of dread mixed with anger. Imagine the atmosphere, fingertips tapping nervously, whispers of disbelief, the bitter taste of injustice hanging in the air. He turned to a list projected on the wall, numbers and facts. Over 10% of construction workers in the capital are migrants. In Siberia, it climbs above 25%. The reality was staring everyone in the face, our growth, our strength, is built on their shoulders. Yet, the government's plan threatened to tear it all apart. He paused, eyes scanning the room as if challenging each person to confront the truth. Who will replace these workers, he demanded. Will it be robots from the factories? Will it be automated tractors? Or is it a hope that our country can survive without its backbone? His voice was calm, but the words echoed like a punch. Every phrase burned with purpose. He laid out a stark choice: either sever the roots and watch the tree die, or nurture the roots and let the country thrive. Meanwhile, the crowd shifted uneasily. Some deputies looked at the list of migrants, names, numbers, faces etched into their memory. One young man, distracted, pressed his phone nervously, sensing an impending storm. The room's atmosphere grew heavier. Fear and anger battled for control. Who would be the next to fall? Was it simply a debate, or a warning shot across the bow of a nation already trembling? He looked into the eyes of each listener, each one with their own story, their own sacrifices. There was a man named Ruslan, a friend from Azerbaijan. Once, he worked alongside him in the economic department.
Now, he is gone.
A victim of neglect, murdered in the subway, his dream destroyed by prejudice. Ruslan's story was a window into the lives of countless others, people who came seeking better lives but faced hostility instead. His voice quivered with emotion. We built this country together.
Now you ask us to tear down what we created?
The room fell into a profound silence. Many deputies looked away, uncomfortable.
Some grimaced, others silent.
The air was thick, vivid, cold, heavy with unspoken accusations. The intruder's words lingered like smoke in the lungs. They weren't just about immigration, they were about survival, identity, and the price of neglect.
Then, softly but unmistakably, the man added. Russia isn't just a landmass.
It's alive because it refuses to fear love. It's about growth, accepting the different, nurturing the diverse, accepting that life thrives on change. His gaze swept across the chamber.
If we deny this, we risk killing the entire forest.
But if we embrace it, yes, it will be loud, chaotic, difficult, but it will be alive. He paused, eyes shining with conviction. The room remained silent. No applause, no shouting, just the weight of what had been said.
Then he concluded, quietly but firmly, everyone's fate is intertwined.
Either we're all part of this country's future, or we lose ourselves forever. As he stepped back from the stage, the echo of his words lingered like a warning or a call to action. The fire in the hall smoldered, and the future hung in the balance, silent, but screaming to be heard.
Will this grow into change, or will it fade into the shadows of neglect? Only time will tell.
5 minutes ago, a storm rocked the heart of the nation's parliamentary chamber. The room, usually echoing with routine speeches, suddenly plunged into an icy silence. Vasily Ulyi, Vinovnik Hausa, Andrei Rimovich, Belousov, all these names, once familiar, now echoed with shocking intensity. The historic return of the Cardinal of Russia marked a turning point, ending nearly a year of turbulent debates. And the war in Cloche was declared over, yet the words spoken in that hall ignited a new fire.
Belousov's voice shattered the silence like a thunderclap.
His words, sharp and unforgiving, stirred anger among the deputies. With the backdrop of Central Asia's shadows, his accusations cut like a blade, forcing everyone to listen till the very end. He stepped into the hall as if summoned by destiny, devoid of the usual fanfare, ordinary yet formidable. No noise, no flourish, just the weight of gravity pressing down. The scene resembled an art museum with broken relics, men in worn jackets, faces hardened by life's battles, showing wounds that refused to heal. Andrei Rimovich, the defense minister, now stood amid figures more reminiscent of a steel forge than a government palace. His face, dry and tired, wore the mask of someone who had seen too much, eyes darker, clothes as black as archives during a crisis. He held a thin folder, not a document, but a symbol, an empty promise, a whisper of what could be lost. He moved to the center, where young deputies whispered heatedly, their voices broken by fear or defiance. One woman's voice floated like a distant drone, claiming, if you don't want a digital pension, live as you wish. Inside, something shifted, an unease that clung to the skin, like static before a storm. His steps were deliberate, each one a thundering toll, every movement a declaration that the moment had come. No one escaped the gaze of the man who seemed to materialize from the shadows, silent yet all-powerful. His back was a silhouette of resolve, leaving everyone understanding, today, no one would remain untouched. The hall's routine faded into a tense stillness, fingers tapped nervously, whispers stilled. Vyacheslav Volodyin faced him like a fortress, voice unwavering, advocating for the deportation of illegal immigrants, full stop, by 2030. He displayed a list of numbers, bleak and undeniable, more than 10% in construction, 40% in Moscow, 25% in Siberia, almost a third in logistics. The question hung in the air, who will fill these roles if they are pushed out? The hall's pulse quickened, deputies exchanged nervous glances. Will they choose to rebuild society or tear it apart at its seams? Suddenly, the hall grew colder, an oppressive silence pressing against the skin. Then a new figure entered the fray, calm, deliberate, unyielding. His voice, soft yet piercing, cut through the tension like a sharp scalpel. His words painted vivid images, men pulling bricks, women carrying hopes, families building futures.
He spoke of the immigrant from Tajikistan, Ahmad, whose daughter was born amid hardship.
In a quiet voice, he recounted how Ahmad had built a school for his community, just to be part of the homeland.
He paused, eyes sweeping the room,
asking if we truly grasped the meaning of community and belonging. Who will hold the country together when the snow falls again, and the cold bites deep, he questioned.
The silence thickened.
He extended a hand, not for destruction, but for understanding, an invitation to see beyond fear. He urged everyone to look at the future, one that depends on embracing differences, not fearing them.
Let our nation be like a tree, he said softly.
If we give it sunlight, it will flourish.
If we deny it, it will wither.
He looked directly into the eyes of all present, speaking of a Russia that is still alive because it dares to love. The hall went still, no cameras, no sounds. Just a collective pause as everyone absorbed the truth. He stared into the distance, then whispered something that echoed long after. If you were a child who faced hardship, who endured for others, you would want us to protect those who suffer, not cast them away.
He stepped from the stage, silent yet powerful.
The journalists hurried after him, but he moved into the streets, rain washing over him, cold and relentless. He paused beside the steps leading from the White House, turned, and silently expressed his gratitude, more respectful than his words had been. If you listened till the end, thank you.
This story isn't about migration, borders, or politics. It's about the future we will create together, our collective destiny. Because the real question remains, who will you choose to be tomorrow? Will you stand with the fearmongers or with those who build bridges? The answer lies within us all.